the way that is necessary, particularly through these very difficult and uncertain times. Welcome to the program, the Monday midday edition here on Reality Check. We're actually waiting for a guest at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. We were scheduled to speak with the Black Caucus Chair of the Democratic National Committee, Virgie Rollins, supposed to be joining us very shortly here at the top of this 10 o'clock hour. Then a little bit later on in the 10 o'clock hour, we have our Pressing Matters National edition. Joining us will be David Love and also Danielle Moody Mills. They're slated to join us or scheduled to join us a little bit later on in the 10 o'clock hour as well. Continue to go to @Ellison Report, @Ellison Report on Twitter.com. If you use Twitter, that's the way to connect with me, to engage with me in the social media space. You do it through Twitter, Twitter.com, @Ellison Report. Some of you are already on Twitter.com, and if you're not on Twitter, which I recommend, as far as it can be a hassle sometimes, but it is the easiest social media tool to use, and the best way to engage with yours truly here on Reality Check. So go to Twitter.com, @Ellison Report, or hashtag Reality Check as well while we wait on Virgie Rollins. She should be calling. We're expecting for her to call shortly at the top of this 10 o'clock hour. Rather violent weekend in Philadelphia. We have tragically, once again, another child ending up as a fatality as a result of shootings that were taking place throughout Philadelphia over the weekend. And just in one afternoon, there were like 5 fatalities and 5 shootings in one afternoon in Philadelphia. Also, other teenagers, 11 to 15-year-olds also injured in the spate of shootings. Quite a violent weekend in Philadelphia, which has now increased the homicide rate as of last count to right now we have it where it is at 210 homicides. If you look at the latest Philadelphia police crime statistics or homicide statistics, we have 210 homicides to date in 2020. It's 27%. It has spiked up to 27%. Now, last time we were here on Reality Check on Thursday, it was 23% more than where it was this time last year, and we had already crossed the 200 mark. We are now at 210 homicides officially as of yesterday, July 5th, and 27% more than where we were this time last year. So 2 things that indicates for us. One, it feels like in Philadelphia that it's just, particularly with these shootings over the weekend, it feels like we're preparing for, or we're bracing for a very hot summer, and not just in terms of the weather, but in terms of the temperature of violence that's about to grip the city of Philadelphia. And that's sad to say, but a lot of us are expecting that, and we're bracing for that. So this was something of an omen that happened over the weekend, particularly with the heat, high temperatures. A lot of people also, more and more people, going outside, obviously stay at home, much more relaxed than it was over the past several months. But in Philadelphia, that pretty much didn't matter, because Philadelphia's violence and homicide rate was still spiking in the up direction, even during lockdown, during quarantining, stay at home. But, definitely see that as an omen of a very bad summer ahead of us in Philadelphia, and a summer that will for sure keep us on the very unfortunate, very tragic path towards outpacing last year's record homicide rate in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is in a bad state as far as violence, and anyone telling you that it's not, that everything will be okay, is just bold-faced lying to you. Philadelphia is in a very bad state, and it is a state of alarm and emergency. We're particularly for a city of 1.6 million. And it's a city that's smaller in size compared to Chicago. Remember, everyone was talking about Chicago a few years ago as being the most violent city. And Philadelphia, definitely, we can't talk about Chicago anymore. We're going to have to worry about what's happening in Philadelphia, particularly when we're now over 200 homicides and we're actually outpacing other big cities that have larger populations than us. We either have more homicides in terms of, just basic numbers, or our violence rate in Philadelphia far exceeds what's happening in other big cities. I'm not sure what's going on with the Black Caucus chair for the Democratic National Committee, Virgie Rollins. So I'm not sure if she's available yet. So we're just now waiting on her. She was scheduled. We're going to open the phone lines. I'm not sure what's going on there. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900. We're going to open up the phone lines at the top of this 10 o'clock hour, particularly as we wait on the DNC Black Caucus chair. 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900. Talking about that homicide rate, the high violence rate in the city of Philadelphia. So one, just an omen of what's to come over the summer, and how many of us in the community are bracing for that. Two, we had a July 4th weekend where you have people using a high amount of fireworks in the city of Philadelphia, and so once again you can thank Mayor Jim Kenney for that. And so in many respects, you can make the argument that Mayor Jim Kenney is partly responsible for particularly the spikes in violence that occurred over the weekend. He's responsible for that because he's the one that made fireworks legalized in Philadelphia. So, how do you do that? He did that last year. And so common sense would dictate like, oh, you know what, maybe I should not make it easier to access fireworks or sell fireworks in the city of Philadelphia, because we are in the middle of a gun violence crisis here in Philly, so maybe I shouldn't do that. But once again, he got the pass in the last mayoral primary. He won his second lame duck term, and it just defies logic that you would sign off on policy like that. Fireworks can be just as violent as firearms. I mean, fireworks are pretty much kind of like firearms light, and he's partly responsible for that. So, there's some hypocrisy there, with, kind of his empty statements and rhetoric, what he usually puts out when these sorts of spikes of violence happen. But it's sort of this, once again, it's this lackadaisical, nonchalant attitude from folks in City Hall with empty, performative rhetoric around like, oh, how sad it is with the violence. We don't want to know how sad you are about the violence. We want to know, one, what you're going to do about it, and two, if your attitude, really shows a sense of urgency around this. So, there's one, like, how are you the mayor of a city where you just got out of a year with, you were in the middle of, when you signed off on this policy, you were in the middle of a record homicide year, with low homicide closure rates, or a low rate of homicides being solved in the city. So as mayor, you're the one who's getting that information and that intelligence on a daily basis. You see what's happening in your city, and you sign off on making it easier to access or to sell fireworks in the city of Philadelphia. So that already sets the wrong tone. And then two, this goes back to city council. Like, and I said this last year, and I kind of stay on this hill for a while. If you've crossed the 200 mark, you're well ahead of 200 homicides in the city of Philadelphia. You are on pace to, Philadelphia is on pace to exceeding, to either matching or exceeding 400 homicides for the year. I mean, if the math all works out, Philadelphia could very well get to 400, perhaps even 500 homicides for the year if it keeps up at this rate, which will be, just very alarming, right? And it's definitely not a good look for a city that's trying to attract more people into it. That makes the city just it makes it extremely unsafe. So all this is going on, and then you still go to, you still call publicly, and you go into what you call a recess. as a city council. Like who does that? So I mean, you would be alarmed to say, okay, hey, you know what? Let's at least give the impression that we're still in business, that we're still in operation. It's just, once again, it's like, what sort of mindset are you in? What sort of attitude do you have on how you're going to tackle this? You may be limited in resources. I get that. The city may be limited in resources. The city is definitely strapped for money. The city is definitely in a very precarious financial and fiscal state, which hampers its ability to respond adequately to a crisis like this. But you can really get the community on board. You can make this an all hands on deck citywide team effort if just the mindset, if the sense of urgency is there. You just don't see it coming out of City Hall. You see the obligatory statements and press releases that happen, or statements that happen each time these sorts of crises strike, but that's not enough. So you really have to set the the theme. You have to set the kind of messaging, and you have to set the optics right. You have to, like if you're public officials, you're going to have to then, sort of burn the midnight oil on, going to places where the violence is happening, going to hospitals, visiting people, and also not announcing that, oh, hey, we're going to go into a recess. It doesn't set the right tone. Then people feel like, and no wonder people feel like, oh, then they must not be doing anything. My neighborhood is on fire, and I'm just telling you how folks in City Hall have to think from a perspective of, okay, you know what? Here are residents here who are not members of City Council. Here are residents here who are not familiar with the sausage making process, or they're not familiar with the particulars of the details of how this place functions or operates. You have to work from that assumption. You can't just assume that everyone knows the kind of responsibilities that you're faced with as a public official, or as a mayor of a city, or as a city council member. And sometimes I feel like public officials in the city feel that way. They somehow feel like, oh yeah, like people understand what we go through, and no, they don't. So people, regular, average Janes and Joes, Tamikas and Tyrones in the city of Philadelphia do not understand. Most people don't have a grasp of exactly how City Hall or how a legislative body like City Council operates. So when they hear the term recess, they hear you, City Council, tapping out. I mean, and I think Councilmember Isaiah Thomas kind of hinted at this in his closing remarks or statements about a couple of weeks ago at the last City Council session for the season. And he was talking about how, he's definitely going to be constantly at work. It's people are getting the impression that you've tapped out, that you're like, oh, okay, well, we got to go on recess, we got to go on vacation. And so City Hall is going to have to set a better attitudinal or mental template for how they react and respond to crises like high violence, high poverty, high food insecurity, and other issues plaguing the city. They're going to have to come up with a better attitudinal and mindset template on how they respond to this crisis, even when you're the type of city that's not in a completely healthy fiscal position to respond to these sorts of events, or to respond to these types of emergencies. Let me go to AC out of West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. AC?
Hey, how you doing, Brother Charles? I hope
how you
you're
doing
tonight. And I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. I went throughout the city, and it was very disheartening. I saw downtown from, let's say, Market Street or JFK to
right.
South Street or Bainbridge Street, on mostly every corner, 8 to 10 police officers on each corner. You couldn't get through the expressway. If you didn't know your way around downtown, you would have been lost. It was so many cops blocking the streets. Mm-hmm. Yet, in our city, Brother Charles, in the areas, in the communities, we had violence on top of violence. Yeah. Something's not right.
No.
And then you take and look at the overtime that they're paying just between May the 30th and Sunday the 21st of June. They paid almost $18 million in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong, Brother Charles, and I guarantee you, if 20, and I hate to put it like this, if 21 dogs would have been killed, 21 dogs would have been shot, and 5 would have been killed, there would have been more outcry by city council. It's hard, Brother Charles, to have respect for those individuals when they don't give a moment of silence at each city council meeting. They should give a moment of silence for all the innocent people who got killed, even if they just say the women and children. Everybody that the police could tell them were totally innocent. If they just gave a moment, they're hypocrites, Brother Charles. And it's hard to respect them. And I know you try to hold the balance, but it's really hard not to call them some very nasty names because they're not standing for our people. They're not standing. They care more about a dog or. Let
me ask you, and AC too on that point. Let me ask you: when council says it's going to recess, what does that conjure up in your mind? What do you take that as?
That conjures that you're going on some kind of vacation or semi-vacation.
Right,
you don't
right,
do it
right.
without
right. I just want to make sure that I'm not the only one. I'm fine. I'm fine to admit, I really am fine if I have to admit I'm wrong on this statement. If people come back at me, and I had this exchange a while back last year with the city council president on this. He's like, yeah, I've heard you say that, our recess is like vacation, and it's not. We're still working. I'm like, okay, so if I'm the only one on this, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what people are thinking. People are thinking, you going on vacation. You're going on a vacation in the midst of a major violence crisis that's striking the city. I'm sorry, let me go ahead and finish up, AC.
Yeah, at least during the COVID, Charles, you could amend it and say, we will meet every 2 weeks, like Brother Isaiah was trying to kind of allude to. I think that's what he was trying to say. Even if you just, if for COVID, we're going to amend it. They don't stop their pay. And I'm telling you, Brother Charles, it's hard not to call them every name in the book for their actions. And I'm going to leave with this one.
Yeah.
The president of city council, he's supposed to wield so much power. I can guarantee you between him and the Point Breeze area where the indicted councilman is at Kenyatta Johnson, I bet you they have the lowest clearance rate in the city for homicides.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we just have to, yeah, and that's something we need to look at too. AC, I gotta let you go. So, but that's something that people are gonna have to think about. And public officials, city officials, I mean, it sucks that I don't want to be the one, and I know that there are others out there. Well, I can speak for myself. I don't want to be in a position where I have to be hard on City Hall, have to be hard on the mayor or city council. But just the mindset and the messaging and the type of attitude that you're displaying in front of your constituents and citizens, that counts for some. It counts a lot. And, some people would say, and I get it. I mean, the city council did do its moment of silence for George Floyd. But at the end of the day, George Floyd was very tragic, very sad and horrific. It was nauseating to watch what happened to George Floyd. And so the social justice movements that has precipitated from his death, are justified. But in the context of Philadelphia's homicide crisis or emergency that's happening right now, George Floyd happened 1,300 miles away from Philadelphia. We have 210 people thus far officially that have been killed inside the city of Philadelphia, and you still have a 60% chance of getting away with murder in the city of Philadelphia. That has got to stop. And the city residents, constituents have to see that you as City Hall, as a mayor, as a city council, and other public officials really, 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 truly care, because people are not getting that message or that kind of vibe just yet. All right, let's take a, people have been dying. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll go to Pressing Matters National. Coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you want to start your morning with mindfulness, motivation, and inspiration, tune in to Daybreak with me, Helana, here on WURD Radio, Monday to Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. I'm a health and wellness coach with over 15 years experience helping people to transform their lives. On the show, we talk health and wellness 360, from getting your mind right to getting your money right. So let's rise and shine together right here on WURDradio.com, 96.1 FM, 900 on your AM dial on Daybreak every morning.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. Have an old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Pico will pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you a $75 rebate. That's right, $75. Plus, you can save as much as $150 a year on your energy bill by getting rid of it. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. Be sure your fridge or freezer is plugged in and working at time of pickup.
WordRadio.com.
The Fresh Grocer of Monument Road now has even more to offer their customers. This Fresh Grocer location now has online shopping, so you can skip the hassle of going into the store. With convenient options of delivery right to your door or curbside pickup, they will do the shopping for you. You can get started at thefreshgrocer.com or by downloading the Fresh Grocer app on your mobile device.
This is WURD breaking news.
Yeah, a unanimous ruling coming out of the Supreme Court this morning. They unanimously ruled on a case regarding faithless electors in the Electoral College. The Supreme Court ruling that laws, like specific state laws, and this was based off a Colorado case that made its way up to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court ruling that any state laws or laws that take action against faithless electors or electors, electors are the ones who are essentially members of the Electoral College. But if electors vote against their party in the Electoral College, they can be penalized for that. And so state laws, essentially the Supreme Court unanimously ruling that laws that take action against electors who vote against their party in the Electoral College are valid. And so, basically, faithless electors can't be faithless electors. At least that's the first reading that I'm still kind of getting. I just saw this literally before we went into break, so we'll get a little bit more information on that. But states may require presidential electors to support the popular vote winner. So that's essentially what that ruling is in a nutshell. So. And that's what that Colorado case was about. This was based on a case that was not just in Colorado, but also in Washington. State officials in Colorado and Washington had asked the Supreme Court to settle the matter regarding faithless electors determining the outcome of a presidential election. So Supreme Court saying that states basically, presidential electors have to support the popular vote winner in a case like that. They just can't, the faithless elector can't, or the elector cannot just go with their own gut in that. So this was a unanimous ruling coming out of the Supreme Court. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Maybe we'll talk to our Pressing Matters National folks to see if they've been watching this case very carefully and get their thoughts on it. I know David Love is on with us right now. David Love is here with Pressing Matters National. David, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing very well. Good to talk to you. How are things?
Oh, everything's good, man. We're hanging in there. So I want to get your first kind of impression. I don't know if you have been following that case or the faithless elector case that was in the Supreme Court. This is a fairly significant ruling, but wanted to get your first thoughts on it with the Supreme Court just handed out today.
Yeah, I would be very interested to read the ruling.
Yeah.
I think that more than anything else, it just we have to get rid of the Electoral College. I mean, ultimately, I think what's important is that the person who gets the most votes, popular vote, should become president.
Yeah.
But the Electoral College was designed to placate the slaveholding states and to give them more power than they deserve. And, ultimately, I think that we're not going to really resolve any of this until we just get rid of the institution altogether. Other than that, I definitely want to read the opinion before I, make any other statements.
Right. You know what? And on that, we're still waiting on. I think Danielle Munoz was supposed to be joining us, so she hasn't stopped by yet. But once she's on too. Let me get any reaction from her on that about the Electoral College. It was an Electoral College ruling out of Supreme Court this morning. It just dropped. That's the breaking news of the morning. Danielle, how are you doing? Can you hear us?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I don't know if you have been following these cases. They were coming out of Colorado and Washington State regarding faithless electors. And so, you're having a small number of faithless electors that could determine the outcome of a very tight presidential election. And so that's what this case was about. Just the first thoughts on this, on how this was to my understanding, it's a unanimous decision. It just dropped literally as of several moments ago, but wanted to get your first thoughts on this.
What? So I have not been following the cases incredibly closely, but what was they are never unanimous on anything. What was the unanimous decision?
Oh, so yeah, Supreme Court ruling that states can penalize faithless electors. The members of the Electoral College who do not, and faithless electors are people in the Electoral College who do not support the winner of their state's popular vote in a presidential election. Because, you have state laws against faithless electors. I don't think it's every state, but I know it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's nearly most states, right? So, but we saw, like in 2016, we saw 10 electors who voted for someone other than their state's chosen candidate. So the Electoral College is, in a way, supposed to validate the popular vote in a state. But then you saw about 10 electors who voted for someone else other than their state's chosen candidate. And, faithless electors have the potential of swinging an election. But the Supreme Court ruling that states can penalize faithless electors. And this decision was unanimous.
I mean, I think that in all honesty, like the Electoral College has so many problems. Like it has so many holes, and we've seen that. We saw it in 2016. We saw it in 2000. And so there are so many flaws with the way that our Supreme Court and our Electoral College and just our government is functioning these days that it just makes me feel like we're getting closer and closer to anointing a king as opposed to having a democracy.
Yeah, no, it's something I definitely want to talk about. I want to give you both a chance to absorb it. Definitely has been a lot of conversation, especially over the past year, about the Electoral College and about what to do with it. Obviously it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, I know there've been calls to abolish it, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, definitely how do we then sort of deal with what we've got, with what's happening there? But, very a major ruling and a unanimous ruling at that coming out of the Supreme Court today. I want to ask you both, David, go back to you. We saw over the weekend more normalization of white nationalist politics, particularly from the president. And so it's not just the politics, the white nationalist politics that the president is embracing and he feels like he needs to use to win re-election, but it's white nationalists governing. I mean, just the way in terms of how the government right now is operating. We saw it on full display over the weekend. We've been seeing it in very concerning action over like a number of years now, particularly with this Trump administration. Not like white nationalist government, white supremacist government had went anywhere since the inception of this country anyway. But talk more about that, about like how alarming this is and where you see this headed.
Yeah, well, I think it's very alarming. And it's no surprise. I mean, when Trump rolled in 4 years ago with Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, and the rest of the gang, it was pretty clear to many of us. I mean, just looking at the rallies that he was holding, it was all about white nationalism and particularly white grievances. This idea that, and this is very common in, the white supremacist philosophy, that folks are an endangered species, and that the way to help white people is to get rid of policies like immigration, to get rid of affirmative action, and to do whatever you can to stop the tide of black and brown folks coming into the country, and doing anything that you can to make sure that you stop them from succeeding. So, I think this is just more of the same old thing. I think it's finally hitting people at a time of rising is on the minds of everyone, all of a sudden now it's hitting people. Wow, this is really a problem. And at the same time, I think it's going against the tide. I see Trump has control of the levers of power. So it looks like he's going to do whatever to try to win. But this is not a majority strategy. I think that, a minority of people are down with this.
Hey, Daniel, how effective is this strategy, embracing white resentment, dog whistle campaign messaging in politics? How effective would that be? And we are seeing, even Gallup now has the president's approval rating. I think it's at 38%. So now we're seeing it below the approval rate, sinking below 40%. So it's getting into red alert area. If you're looking at this from the perspective of Republicans and the Trump political camp, this is very concerning now. It's very alarming for you. You're in a red alert zone when you're below 40%. When it gets to 35%, it's not only existential, but your fate is pretty much like the nail is in the coffin for him. But what's your thought on this as far as, will this be effective, this type of white resentment, divisional, racial division politics that we see played out, especially over the weekend?
Yeah, I think that, Donald Trump is doubling down on the prescriptions that he used in 2016. White resentment, is the tide that he rode into power, along with the help of Vladimir Putin and Russia. And so he's doing what he knows, which is to double down on this. But what we are seeing, along with the uprisings of Black Lives Matter that is happening across the country, you're also witnessing, like you're saying, these changes in polls and perceptions. Monmouth University did a poll a couple of weeks ago where they found 76% of Americans believe that racism is a big problem in the United States. 71% of white Americans believe that racism is now a big problem in the United States. This is up from a 2018 poll where you had barely 50%. And so, Donald Trump is doing what he knows to do, but the reality is that he doesn't have the numbers, right? That I believe that there are more people who recognize that racism is a problem and want to be a part of the solution than wanting to double down. You're seeing his numbers shrink in terms of people showing up for his rallies, one, because we're in the midst of a global health pandemic, and he doesn't seem to care about the health of his constituents or his staff. But we're also recognizing that white people are seeing their kids go out and protest and link arms with people of color and asking them, what have you been doing to quell this problem? And so Donald Trump has never been a president that is about unification. He is about division. He is moving along with the divide and conquer type mentality and ideology. And I think that the Republican Party is going to be in major trouble. They're not going to be able to wipe away the stain of Donald Trump. And my hope is that people do not become complacent as they are seeing these poll numbers come out as if they do not have to vote, because this is the polls don't vote. Right? So while we, are looking at these numbers and these percentages, I don't want people to get complacent in the work that still needs to be done.
Yeah, and on that too, Daniel and David, talk a little bit about this or expound on that, and then Daniel, I'll have you jump in. Can we trust that, right? So you do see these sort of optimistic signals or signs, whether it's like the large amounts of white people, particularly young white people who are joining Black Lives Matter protests, or whether we look at the polls, whether we look at, just sort of this perception or this impression that the public is pushing back against these notions of white racial resentment and division. Can we still trust that? Because we kind of put a little bit of trust in that back in 2016, right? The other thing too is that it's you're having this happening at a time, you might have public perceptions changing for the better around race and racism, more acknowledgement of systemic racism. But you also have this happening at a time where people have a very severe, very dangerous lack of confidence in government. And so, you're saying like high numbers of people who are saying, you know what, forget about this political process. Some people who are still saying, I might tap out of this election.
Yeah, I am very hopeful. I think that what we're seeing now potentially a transformative time in the political discourse. Just the fact that, polls have said that a majority of people support Black Lives Matter, I think is very encouraging. But I think that we still have to wait to see whether this is going to mean lasting change. 4 years ago, people were very hopeful. It looked like Hillary Clinton was going to win, and now we see what we got. Ultimately, I believe that we're in really bad times, and this is not going to be a short-term proposition. But I do think with the pandemic and the racial violence, the police violence at the same time, people are waking up in ways that they haven't because, they are forced on lockdown. They are forced to really look at the world and all of its flaws. And I think it could mean a lot of good things for the upcoming election. I think that, it remains to be seen, but I think that we're seeing an energy that we haven't seen before.
We're going to take a break. David, check your phone too on your signal, David, because we heard you, but we heard you going just in and out just a little bit. So during the break, check the phone signal. We're going to take a break. We've got David Love and also Danielle Moody Mills here on Pressing Matters National on WURD, home of Black Talk Media, 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Greater Philly, but beyond throughout the nation, it's WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message. I'm asking for your support and to join our team. We need a leader to unite this country. We need a leader who will push an agenda to move everyone forward, to allow every American the opportunity to share in this country's prosperity. Someone who will lead, but also who will listen. Someone we can be proud of. I promise you this election isn't about me. It's about you, your family, your community, and our country. The moment has come for our nation to deal with systemic racism, to deal with the denial of the promise of this nation to so many. It's time to make healthcare a right, not a privilege. It's time to give every student the opportunity to get a good education, no matter what their zip code is. It's time to give workers the pay and dignity they deserve. This is the United States of America, and there's nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Paid for by Biden for President.
Support independent Black media and join the onWURD movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
1 in 23 will be diagnosed with colorectal cancer in their lifetime, yet more than 60% of deaths from colorectal cancer could be avoided with preventative screening. A colonoscopy can save your life. Skip the pre-visit and schedule your screening directly at einstein.edu/colon. Colon cancer is preventable. Learn more at einstein.edu/colon.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, we're back at Pressing Matters National. We've got Danielle Moody and also David Love joining us. Danielle Moody at D2Cents, at D2Cents. Get more information. Also, you can listen to the Woke AF podcast, hashtag Woke AF. Go to at DE2Cents there to engage her on social media. She's extremely, very engaged there. And also David Love. You found him in the pages of publications such as onWURD, our very own onWURD environmental justice journalism project, and the Atlanta Black Star, Al Jazeera, and CNN and elsewhere. Both join us. As you can find Danielle from time to time, too, in the pages of those publications. You see her on major cable outlets as well, both joining us here as regular contributors on Pressing Matters National here on WURD's Reality Check. Danielle, so the culture war that we see brewing So, when folks feel like they're losing, they go to the culture war. They don't want to talk about policy. They want to talk about, like you said earlier, the solutions, the structural things we need fixed. Okay, let's head on for a conversation all summer about statues. Let's deploy the Department of Homeland Security to prevent people from taking down statues or vandalizing them. But, I feel like I feel like that could turn into a setup, right? I mean, the culture when people have to be very careful not to get too immersed in what could be a very dangerous rabbit hole.
I think that what we are seeing right now is a reckoning that this country honestly hasn't really unpacked, right? Which is the fact that, whatever these statues want to symbolize for people, it's the idea that our history, the history that has been taught in this country, is a lie, right? That there are many things that have been left out, many things that have been whitewashed and glossed over. And we are a country that has erected symbols and named highways and erected marble, statues and buildings to people who are incredibly problematic, whether they were slaveholders, whether they were part of the Confederacy and lost the war, right? I think that while I don't want the conversation to turn in taking down every statue in every city and every place, I think that there needs to be a real conversation about our history, what has been left out, what has been covered up, and what has been blatant lies.
Go ahead. Sorry, Daniel. Keep on going.
The last thing that I will say is that I've been having this conversation on Woke AF where, my sister, funny enough, had recommended that, we shouldn't remove all of these statues. Where they should go is in a cemetery for the villains of history, where where these people can be put into context of the trouble that they caused over, the stains that they have left on America. But the way that we have done them here, there's no other country where you walk around and you'll see monuments to people that lost wars. That's not how other countries function. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Daniel, I've been struggling with this because I've been very hardline, and I've even written several columns on this in places like theroot.com for years now. Like, hey, all Confederate monuments. Like, I get irritated driving behind someone that's got a Confederate flag bumper sticker, because it's not even just about slavery. It's just straight up treason. You can't be patriotic and fly a Confederate flag. You just can't. It's the most. I've said this on the record. It is the same thing as flying an ISIS flag or an Al Qaeda flag. It just really is. So I don't have any problems. Like, take all that stuff down. Like, everything, last Confederate statue, monument, army base named after. I have no problems with that. I grapple with, whereas I'm against statues like Christopher Columbus, or even I have issues with Lincoln. Like the Lincoln statue with the kneeling slave in D.C. I have issues with that. I mean, aesthetically, and then the history, and as a student of history, you have problems with that. But it's not the same as the Confederate monuments. So you're like, okay, well, how far do we go with this, right? Like, where do we take this? What's the end game with this? And then I just think about it from the vantage point of a strategist and being cynical. Like, could this start making a lot of white people or white voters so uncomfortable where, they vote for Trump just because they don't want statues like Columbus and Lincoln taken down? I don't know. It just, I have a hard time with it. But, feel free to jump in on, either one of you can jump in on that. Danielle?
What I would say is that, we need to stop functioning in the idea of being concerned with what white people are going to do.
Yeah.
Right? I find, this is consistently where the Democratic Party always loses me and goes wrong, which is that, let us not go too far on rectifying the inequities because we don't want to upset white people. We don't want to make it seem like we're giving black people and people of color too much, right? So let's continue to go after and chase their vote. And it's the reality is, again, I will say this, we need to have a reckoning with our history in this country. The history is false. The history is illegitimate, right? The history that we have been taught has holes. I don't know how many white people text me and tweet at me, and they're just like, I did not know as it pertains to the anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. I did not know about X, Y, and Z. I did not know about this. Yes, because you have been lied to, and it's purposeful. And so, like, I just don't want us to say, like, oh, we don't want to tell too much of the truth because white people can't take it. We're in this situation because they have been lied to, because the idea of having to hold up a mirror to your ancestry, right, and understand what you are akin to and tied to is how we got here. So I think I believe that we need to start telling the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. No, David, do you want to jump in on that? And two, what about the role of, I don't hear this conversation enough, David. What about the role of school districts, of schools? To me, like, this is partly, an abject failure on the part of K through 12 education in the United States. This is what you have history classes for. This is what you have social studies classes for, supposedly, to be able to teach kids from a very early age, hey, this is the correct history. Obviously, that has not been taking place. And so I'm wondering, like, the role of educators in a moment like this. Like, when are school districts, when are educators going to step up and say, hey, you know what, this is a void that we could fill here?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. And that reminds me of a piece I had written last year on CNN on the issue. The fact is that people are not learning these things in schools. In many cases, teachers don't even know the facts. But I think, we also have to look at the larger issue because there's a lot of misinformation going around. The fact of the matter is that, the reason why these Confederate monuments are going up is because these white supremacist organizations like the United Daughters of the Confederacy, they lobbied to get these statues up. But another thing that they did is they influenced the textbooks and what is printed, what is published in the textbooks. So they have had control, they've had influence in shaping the narrative of the Confederacy and it being a noble cause, and it's not related to slavery, and it's about economics and states' rights and things like that. So, I think that we have to look at how students are educated or miseducated and look at the organizations that are playing a role in that miseducation.
No, that's no, you're absolutely right. I wanted, before I let you guys go, I did want to move on in topics because there's a lot to unpack there. We could go on for another hour about that, but I'm curious about get your thoughts, Danielle, on Black Republicans. I watched Shermichael Sherrington. He's a high-profile Black Republican, and he publicly split from the Republican Party. He's like, I'm not a Republican anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. I would love to see more Black Republicans. I would like to see all Black Republicans do this. I think I publicly lost a Black Republican associate or friend because we got into a spat over this. Still like a part of the Republican Party is against or seems to be against a lot of things that are going on here, but just cannot seem to get away from that party. And I just think that would make a big difference if you had more Black Republicans doing what Shermichael did. But your thoughts, Danielle?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I've never understood Black Republicans, but then again, I don't understand people continually voting and aligning themselves with people who do not care about them, who do not want the best for them, who literally are only looking at you as some type of trophy, some type of, remember when Donald Trump said, oh, there goes my Black, right? Like, you're some type of trophy for them. So, I applaud Shermichael for waking up, right, to the fact that you're out here supporting and talking about a party that does not want you, and does not lift you up, does not even believe in your humanity, right? Like, they want the Candace Owens in the world to go on television to talk about the fact that, who's the most unprotected class in America? Cops. Are you kidding me? Right? Yeah. So, Black Republicans, I think, they need to look at themselves in the mirror. They need to have a deep realization that they are doing nothing more than, upholding white supremacy.
Yeah.
For a party that is clearly standing on and about racism.
Yeah. I applaud. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot going on there behind the scenes, but that's a tough thing to do. I just know, I know how the Republican Party operates, and they put a very high premium on loyalty, and they put a very high premium. A lot of Black Republicans are Black Republicans because it's they don't even believe in the party, but they get great gigs out of it for them, great consulting gigs, or it gives them the ability to stand out. So it's like, well, it's only a few of us, or a few of people that look like me in a party like this. And some of them are frankly disgruntled Democrats. But David, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I too cannot understand Black Republicans, particularly now. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, I thought it was an issue of, me just not agreeing with them and also thinking that they're Uncle Tom. But now it's dangerous. And I think these people are either just in it for the money, or they're actually crazy, or they're, just cult members. And I think, kudos to Shermichael for standing up, doing the right thing. I think the rest of them are just a hopeless cause, because if you're in the party now, based on everything that's going on, when you know that Black and brown people's lives are in danger, and your president is trying to kill them, then you've lost your mind.
Yeah. Then it's there's no way. I don't know how we can bring you back, but I'm talking with David Love, also Danielle Moody as well, joining us here for Pressing Matters National. Always good to have you both on. Appreciate the insights and the perspective. We don't get you on enough, but we're always happy to have you. Go to @D2Cents, D2Cents for more there to learn more about her hashtag WokeAFDaily. That's her podcast. You can check it out. Also, I think it's another podcast, right? Democracy-ish.
Yeah.
Right, Democracy-ish. Yeah. So check it out. Go to @D2Cents. For more there, and also David Love, go to @DavidALove as well on check him out every now and then, Atlanta Black Star, CNN.com and elsewhere, and he's here too on Pressing Matters National here on Reality Check WRD. Thank you both. Please stay very safe out there. Please stay very healthy, because we didn't even touch on the pandemic that much and how things have gotten worse with that, but please stay safe and healthy.
Same to you. Same to you.
You too, Charles.
All right, I'll talk to you next time. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we have, I believe we're scheduled to have Congressman Dwight Evans on. Congressman Dwight Evans coming up next. Phone lines are open while we talk with them. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Weather and traffic to keep you informed for your drive home. In the Happy Hour with Sincerely Sarita. Monday through Thursday, 4 till 7 p.m. Right here on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the Mattress Man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy, Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
Emerge is a public service announcement campaign produced by Mirror Arts Philadelphia and sponsored by the City of Philadelphia to inspire our community to emerge resilient and hopeful in the face of COVID-19 and systemic racism.
COVID-19 inside my city, germs in the air that's trying to kill me. Can't come outside, I feel like prison. Everything shut down if it's a business. Okay, we got the Emerge. Every often wash hands. Come outside with a mask. This is a COVID caution preparation. Please put your mask on. They're closing down schools, and that was these kids' backbone. They say it can spread for if you get it, so please stay quarantined so you won't send it. Everybody using Zoom calls. Yeah, that's good on business, but ain't nothing like a hustler that's out to go get it.
Come on, y'all. Let's teach the youth not to go through the system. Do positive, think positive. You might look back, see you winning. I'm starting a business, networking, communicating, trying to stay out of prison. They know I'm Mr. Fix It. If I got to speak as a voice, then I want them to listen. The streets is different. They closed down the school and just opened a prison. Germs evading, so I'm keeping my distance. I need a mask and a glove like I need my utensils. We will emerge.
To learn more, go to muralarts.org/emerge. How will you emerge?
Now, with more clarity, this is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, we are back at it here on without a Pressing Matters National. We're back on just with the normal flow, the normal smooth flow of Reality Check Monday midday edition. I'm Charles Ellison. Phone lines are open first, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, while we talk with Congressman Dwight Evans. So go to evans.house.gov for more information. That is your congressman for the 3rd Congressional District of Pennsylvania, and that is covering massive parts of Philadelphia and a couple of neighboring, right across the line suburbs. And he's joining us here on Reality Check, as he does occasionally. Congressman, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning. How are you?
All right. Good. Hanging in there. So not really all that good of a weekend, if you think about it, in Philadelphia. A lot of people getting hurt, a lot of people getting killed in Philadelphia over the weekend. It was a very violent weekend in Philadelphia. 31 people shot in total in Philadelphia since Friday, 7 dead. So what do you make of that, Congressman? And what sort of role could you play? I know you're in a federal elected position, but what sort of role could you play, or are you playing now, to help tackle or combat this violence in Philly?
Charles, there's no question that although I'm at the federal level, I'm equally as concerned as any person out there for what has happened. The question is, if it's one person, it's too much violence. And I do believe at the federal level, we have a role to play. Now, this is something historically in my career, even when I was at the state level, I played a role. And I played a role about having the ability to sue gun manufacturers. That is something that now that I'm at the federal level, I am co-sponsor. I believe that gun manufacturers need to be sued because I think that the weaponry that is there and available is far more powerful. And in my view, there's an intent by the manufacturers to promote this weaponry. And particularly when you look at communities of huge concern and vulnerabilities, particularly in the African-American community, as you mentioned, 31 shot, 7 dead.
Right.
I know in Chicago there was a lot of problems. In Atlanta there was problems. So one is the ability to be able to sue gun manufacturers. The second initiative is the House has passed House RA 8 and House R 1112, closing the Charlotte loophole over a year ago, and then universal background check. So I believe suing the gun manufacturer, universal background check, the Charlotte loophole, those 3 initiatives focus on the question. And the reason at the federal level, Charles, is because, individuals travel across state lines. And the fact of the matter is, I believe that there needs to be a national policy relating to gun violence and what is happening in all our communities all across the entire United States. So suing gun manufacturers, House R8 and House R1112, all three of those initiatives, I believe, would contribute to the reduction aspect. And it's important that Charleston loophole, the Charleston loophole, is something that, obviously you know about what occurred there, and it's something we should pay attention to.
Yeah. And on, just to expand on that conversation a little bit, Congressman, before going to the next topics, but is there anything, however, that's kind of within your arsenal now to, not, no pun intended as far as some of these words that I'm using, but to tackle, like, for example, I remember you passed last year legislation for gun research. There was some monies that went to, I forget the exact figure, but there was a certain X amount of millions of dollars that went to some Philly institution. I don't know if it was Drexel or some institute to study gun violence. We know that there's gun violence in Philly. We know how bad it is. What about monies? Isn't there kind of like pots of money or appropriations? Particularly, you sit on House Ways and Means. I mean, to get resources to Philly to help assist Philadelphia police or to help assist community organizations to solve. For example, we got a very low homicide closure rate. And the Philadelphia Police Department may say, hey, you know what? We don't have the adequate technology to investigate a lot of these homicides, for example, one might say. So, and others, community organizations may say, hey, we've got a bad relationship with police. They don't really look out for us when we become witnesses to these types of crimes. Aren't there some federal dollars to funnel into Philly to resolve some of those issues?
Answer is yes. And the fact of the matter is, what you're talking about is that the Crime Commission, which is run by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, under the jurisdiction, as a matter of fact, former police commissioner, I think Chuck Ramsey, I'm not sure if he's on it or was he's there. I think the Attorney General, those are federal dollars that come to the crime. So the answer is yes. But let me say something to you on a personal note, and this has been an issue that my entire career. I believe that this, too, is a public health epidemic. I believe this is a public health epidemic. I came up with the aspect of a blueprint for a safer Philadelphia. I stay consistent with that. And I say that because when you look at the violence that is occurring, there is no question that we can never make this city what we need to make if we do not address violence. I do not believe that the police in themselves can solve this problem. I don't believe that. I've said that consistently. When Rich Ross was police commissioner, I said that then. So I've always said
I agree.
I don't think that police in themselves can solve this problem. I think that you need to talk about church organizations, business leaders, community leaders, all the people involved. And until we collectively take the onus on and recognize that all of us have a responsibility to try to address the violence. One of the first things the new commissioner said, I never forget, Commissioner Outlaw, she said, if I am to address these issues, quote, I will need your help. Now, if you go back and you look at, that's exactly what she said. I was thoroughly impressed that she recognized it. That it's not a question of she as the commissioner, but communities, churches, every involved. I think that we have always depended too much on the police in themselves to magically solve a problem that, in my view, is a collective problem.
But have you had a but it still is an issue, and I agree with that statement. I do, Congressman. But you don't think it's a problem, right? I mean, okay, the police commissioner can say what she wants, but at the end of the day, her police department, and we need to get her thoughts on this. Her police department only has a 40% homicide closure rate. That sends a message to people who want to perpetrate this kind of violence in Philadelphia. Hey, I have a 60% chance of literally getting away with murder in the city of Philadelphia. So, I mean, she may be impressive in terms of what she's saying in a speech or in press conference remarks, but what is she doing about the homicide closure rate?
Let's be clear. The police department, police commissioner, too, must be fully accountable. So I don't debate that issue, but I'm saying to you, this issue has been a nasty issue that has troubled the city of Philadelphia. And you can take a map, Charles, and you can point out specifically what districts and what communities have a greater level of violence than other communities. There are some communities that have a greater level than others, but I'm sharing with you. So that's why you got to talk about universal background checks. That's why you got to talk about suing gun manufacturers. That's why you got to talk about closing the Charleston loophole. That's why those of us at the federal level and the state level have to do the part because of the availability of weapons. So the availability of weapons is one thing by cutting the supply. You got to cut the supply. And then you also got to work with the police departments, the church organizations, the business community. All of them, they got a responsibility because let me tell you something. A safe community is a better community for all of us in terms of jobs, in terms of living in communities. It can't be certain communities where people are afraid to go up and grow up in those particular communities. So I'm sharing with you that when you talk about putting the onus, or anybody talk about that on the police, you know, you got a big debate about policing and the deliverability of policing. Well, you know, quality of summer jobs is a factor, entrepreneurship, all those things are factors. So I'm not being evasive of your question. You say, yes, the federal government has a role, the state government, the private sector, all. But it really gets back down. I'm going to say this, Charles, I want to get this clearly. Leadership, collective leadership. This is not a new problem. And we, everybody, and particularly you want to talk about within the African-American community, we got an obligation, responsibility. So the Urban League, the NAACP, the Urban Coalition, all those organizations, church organizations, we all got an obligation. This is not a new issue. This is
you got to be on the front line of it.
Destroying. We all got to be on the front line. So I'm doing my role, but we need. What I'm also trying to provide, Charles, is the leadership by talking to you and your radio program, WRD. Now, you know, I'm religiously about talking to you because I'm trying to raise the consciousness. I'm trying to raise the consciousness to those who are out there that this violence is counterproductive. Mothers in charge. I know them well. They're very much involved. Father's Day rally. All of them. All of them. So it's all of us collectively to take this obligation on and using social media and using whatever means that are necessary. So, yes, we should pass our legislation at the federal level and at the state level. And, yes, the city should be, police department, enforceable, and the rate of closing out the amount of murders and killings. I'm just also hoping too, Congressman, like if it's taking us all collectively, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's an all hands on deck, full community effort. But like to your point about a few moments ago, and I don't know what sort of influence you have in those kinds of conversations with institutions, big. We got several Fortune 500 companies that are based in Philadelphia. You've got major world-class academic and medical institutions with big endowments. Penn has a $14 billion endowment. I saw in Chicago, we saw that they had reductions in gun violence just about a couple of years ago from the historic levels they had about several years ago because private, public, nonprofit foundations, organizations put their money into a pot, started off with like a $100 million pot and created a program that created jobs for people in the community who were either most affected by that gun violence or who could become future perpetrators of that gun violence. I don't see that happening in Philadelphia. I don't understand why Philadelphia can't do something like that. And I don't know how influential you are in conversations saying, hey, listen, Penn, Comcast, Aramark, Drexel, hey, guys, can you let's all put some money in a pot and let's see, even in times of pandemic, let's see if we can kind of create some anti-poverty conditions
to keep this stuff from happening, or to keep the homicide rate in Philadelphia from hitting 400 or 500 by the end of this year? Hey, can we give people some summer jobs? Can we start a really ambitious summer? They did it in Chicago, and it yielded fruit. What's going on with Philadelphia? Why? I mean, we're putting the onus on black churches, NAACP, Urban League, but what about these big multi-billion-dollar institutions and organizations in Philly? Like, when are they going to put their money on the mat to do something about this?
Well, let me say this. I don't want to debate about Philadelphia and Chicago, because Chicago has a huge problem. But I share with you.
But it's a lot of black people in Chicago. Chicago's 35% black. Philly's 44% black. Yeah. I mean, they have similar characteristics. Yeah, frankly, I'm feeling a little bit competitive. I hate that Chicago is doing it a little bit better than my hometown is doing it. Well, I want us to do this better.
Right now, I would say to you, there are organizations such as Concerned Black Men, right? And organizations like that, which are grassroots organizations, which was police officers, black police officers, and firemen, okay? Organizations like that. They're not what they used to be, but they are around. What I'm saying to you, where my role comes in, is being a convener. It's being like you and I having this kind of conversation with the corporations and the non-corporations, but the grassroots. I'm a strong believer in grassroots solutions. Grassroots solutions, right? And the fact of the matter is that the parents, I mentioned mothers in charge. I mentioned them because all of them can play a part of this movement. Now, with this pandemic, that pushes a greater challenge. That pushes a greater challenge for all of us. Because with the health condition as they are, that even though I mentioned Concerned Black Men and mothers in charge and whoever else, the fact of the matter is a lot of folks you're not going to see out on the street as they once were. So that means we have to reimagine our strategy in approaching it. The things you were talking about have been relatively new in the last week or 2 weeks. I've seen on the news that these things occur. So that means it requires on all of our parts, myself included, a reimagining the approaches that we have. Even the media, even the black media, that's WRD, the Philadelphia Tribune, WDS, all of them. So it has to be a collectivism. It can't be depending on Commissioner Outlaw. Yes, I agree on the closing. It needs to be greater. I don't disagree with that. So I want to be clear. I'm bothered, but let me say this, Charles. This issue is an issue that is a long-term strategy. And at least with you and your program, I give you full credit, you are raising the conversation, you're asking the right questions. I have no problem at all with your raising. And I'm hoping through conversation you and I are having and social media as you're communicating it, that people will step up as a collective in communities. I mean, these individuals from where they come, it's all of the above.
Okay, got it. Hey, Congressman, hold on one second. We have people listening in. We have Maurice out of North Philly who wanted to talk with you while we have a conversation with Congressman Dwight Evans here on Reality Check WRD. Maurice, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right.
Well, it's how ironic that you're speaking this today. When I spoke with you last week concerning communities in 52nd Street not having a community benefit agreement, and what you're talking to the Congress about, resin back today. Congressmen had to understand this is not a new phenomenon. Penn and them have an obligation. This is what I've been preaching every day. Penn, Temple don't have an obligation to create a community benefit agreement with the black community. Anyone doing business in the black community must create a benefit agreement. We need two things from Penn and the people you named. We need a partnership and we need a CBA. This is what Councilwoman Blackwell was going to war with them about. This is what all that was about creating a benefit agreement in the black community in her district. While them not creating a benefit agreement, you look and see they were the ones at the table with gentrification. They pushing gentrification, Temple and Penn. So by you bringing it up to the congressman, this is an old issue that never been addressed, and all these people that's playing a part. Also, we missed the point Congress not saying also, Congress missed the part.
Maurice, thank you for that. Thank you for that point, Maurice. I hated to cut you off, Maurice, but we're just kind of shortening on time. Congressman, you want to respond to that? It is an interesting point about community benefit agreements. Those are things that are put on the table.
Maurice, you raised a very good point, but the one thing that may be a little slightly different, I don't want to point fingers at anyone. I think if anything it's a collective as a community, and that we have an obligation and responsibility. You got young people, a lot of young people growing up out there, and it's an awful lot. And the fact of the matter is, may it be federal officials or state officials or city officials, city department, mayor, police, it's quiet. I heard what you said about Chicago, but I share with you, Chicago didn't have a great weekend this weekend, okay? Yeah, and I don't like to do that because you said that. I agree. We have a chance. So from a federal perspective, all these tools and what I call the toolbox need to be addressed and need leadership. And I hate to say it doesn't help when you have leadership in the White House. And I hate to bring that as an element, but when you got poor leadership to bring and the focus is, I'm not making any excuses regarding my responsibility. I told you about universal background check. I told you about Charleston loophole. I told you about suing gun manufacturers. Those are all three initiatives that we have been pushing. But more than that, Charles, and I say this in closing because I know you got to go, to your listening audience, there's not a quick and instant answer. This is a deep-seated challenge that we all have. I'm going to keep stressing that. We can do this better together. If any message I want to stress is we can do this better together when we stay focused. We stay focused in our community.
We've been talking with Congressman Dwight Evans. Go to evans.house.gov for more on your congressman, covering just parts of Philly, by the way. I just want to make sure because I remember congressional district got redistricted not too long ago. So thanks for the clarification on that. 3rd Congressional District of Pennsylvania, go to evans.house.gov for more information on your district and on your congressman. Many of you in this listening audience are constituents of Congressman Dwight Evans. Also go to @RepEvans as well. You want to keep in touch with what your congressional office is doing. You want to get updates, but you also want to get information and access to resources, particularly during these real uncertain times. Congressman, thanks for your time as always. Really appreciate the conversation.
Hey, Charles, thank you for what you seriously, by asking the questions, holding everybody accountable. Thank WRD and your listening audience because we just got to stay relentless and keep pushing because this violence that is occurring should not be acceptable. We just got to keep pushing. And everybody, because I don't think you think police department, DA, it's within our community. They got responsibility, got to hold them accountable, but also with our own community, we got some things that got to be done.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Congressman. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Center for American Progress's Simon Clark. He just recently did a report showing how white supremacy has returned to mainstream politics. I'm not sure if it went anywhere, but anyway, but it's a very fascinating briefing and study that just dropped out of the Center for American Progress. We're headed into a CAP corner with our partners down in Washington, D.C. Simon Clark coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Your child deserves to be educated in a safe learning environment. Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School is a tuition-free public school. Both our locations offer dual-gender environments with single-gender classrooms. Our students score in the top state testing percentile among area schools. Apply online at bit.ly/enrolls SLA in all caps. That's bit.ly/enroll SLA.
No fear, just facts. WURD.
I ain't no better than you, and you ain't no better than me. But we all have something in common. We all are in species, seeds of God's creation.
Tune in to Messages in the Music every Friday night with Joey T, midnight to 6 a.m. right here on WURD.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. We're here on Reality Check. Reality Check is the Monday at midday edition of Reality Check. I want to thank everyone for listening and the people watching on Word TV as well at Facebook Live, facebook.com/4word. Many of you do watch us there. Got some comments there. We'll get to those a little bit later on because I think we may have some open phone lines a little bit later on. I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll probably have open phone lines ahead into the 12 o'clock hour. So definitely we'll get to that. And people watching us also on youtube.com/onWord and people listening in by Word app throughout the nation and throughout the globe as well. We have now joining us, he's back. He was here with us a while back. Simon Clark is a senior fellow at the National Security Domestic Terrorism expert at the Center for American Progress. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more information. Check out his new report. This is a very useful report, very informative, how white supremacy has returned to mainstream politics. And we have Simon Clark on with us now to talk with us a little bit about that, give us some added, to expound on it, and give us some added insights as to, especially as we've seen what happened, like, for example, over the weekend with the normalization of a lot of this white nationalist language coming from the president and other major figures. Simon Clark joins us by phone. Simon, how are you doing?
Very well. Thanks for having me back. Really appreciate it.
Okay, excellent. Good to have you back on. So you argue white supremacy has returned to mainstream American politics. Some might ask, well, wasn't it always there? Like, where did it go? So if it's returned, but yeah, that would be good to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's always been there. There's always been a strand, from the founding of the republic. But what had happened was that, particularly after 68, it has become not respectable, right? So, sure, there were conservative politicians who used the language and used the tropes, but they did it, they did it subtly. But Reagan goes down to Mississippi to give a speech, but he doesn't go and use white nationalist or white supremacist language explicitly. What happened recently, this predates Trump, right? But it certainly is manifested most in his presidency, is that it became explicit, and it became actually central to a whole strand of politics. And that's dangerous. And my argument is this has become a core issue. This is a really dangerous thing because normalizing white supremacist language puts everybody at risk, right? Because it makes it seem normal. And there's a reason it happened, and there's a way to beat it.
Hey, Simon, if you could, too, I just want to make sure everyone's hearing. I think I can hear you. I'm not sure if you're using a Bluetooth or AirPods or.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm on a direct line. I thought we had a good line. Is that better?
Oh, that's much better. Yeah, for some reason, I just want to make sure you sound a little bit muffled, but we're good now. We're real good. No, that's good. And so, talk about how this is all unfolding and happening there. And there is like this sort of implicit acknowledgement from the perpetrators or from the bad actors, people even like the president, that they know they're engaging in this kind of rhetoric and this kind of like gut style of governance. Which is why, sometimes they'll backtrack or will have his spokespersons backtrack on something that he said or something that he did or tweeted. But how is this all unfolding and happening before our very eyes right now? Because it's both like an embrace of the message, but it's also in how the government is operating now.
Yes, and let's be clear, the backtracks are all winks and nods. They are not serious. So you will notice that the backtrack is never an apology, right? It's always well, we may have gone a bit too far, but we kind of really mean it. So
Right.
Let's talk about how it manifests in the language. And then you're right. Let's talk about how it manifests in practice. In the language, whether you're talking about protecting Confederate statues or declaring that most Americans are the enemy, as the president did this weekend, that's an extraordinary statement. You are trying to set up, they are trying to set up a set of divisions that dehumanize, that tell their voters and their supporters that the other people, their opponents, don't count. And the terrible thing is, of course, the language becomes policy, and it becomes policy against the most vulnerable people. So just look at the way immigrants have been treated ever since this administration came into office, and the shameful legacy that we are now dealing with. That is pretty typical of this style of politics, and it only gets worse.
You were also saying how like public attitudes, and you were talking about this a few moments ago, and you talk about this in your brief, in your report. Fortunately, like public attitudes have come around as far as views on white supremacy in terms of acknowledgement or recognition of white supremacy or racism, systemic racism. But that doesn't align with the governance, with how things are being governed right now. And this is happening at a time where people have talk about that too. People have very low confidence in government right now, which I feel is very, very dangerous. I mean, you have low civic literacy, but you also have just historically low levels of confidence in how government operates, and government on all levels, state, local, and federal.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So let's start with how attitudes have changed. And it's pretty hard to argue against the proposition that Black Lives Matter and the other groups connected to it have been some of the most successful political movements of the recent decade, right? They've fundamentally changed attitudes for the better, and that's a really hard thing to do, and they've done it. So hats off. But at the same time, a lot of the rhetoric of the white supremacists and their allies in politics is about discrediting government, is about saying you can't trust them. Because if government isn't trusted, then you don't expect it to do anything. And then, remember, the background to all of this is about keeping power and being able to take the resources. Of course, discrediting government works. So you're quite right. You've got a position where attitudes have changed dramatically for the better, while at the same time governance has changed dramatically for the worse. Only one of those stays.
That's where you have like folks who are making those kinds of plans, those white, because it's interesting, right? They're anti-government in the language, while at the same time they're trying to take over government. So which is interesting. What I'm fascinated about too is the generational split, right? Because going back to that conversation about how the attitudes have generally changed, popular sort of zeitgeist conversation is that this is a bad thing. Not just even calling people names or throwing all sorts of racially offensive insults at them, but, operating in a systemically oppressive way is bad. So there's general recognition of that. But then it's the people who run government are much older, are coming from another generation in time, in large part, many of them, not all of them, but many of them who do, including President Trump himself. How does that play into it as well? Like, kind of these generational divides in terms of perception, because Gen Zs and millennials are, and even to a certain degree, Gen X are a lot more kind of progressive in like their racial thinking than say older people like white baby boomers, for example.
So let me give you two bits of good news and one bit of bad news. The crucial bit of good news is we are all being saved by our children. I don't know your age, but I'm an old guy. I've got adult kids. And it's a wonderful generation. It's active. It's serious. It's taking an honest look at our history. It thinks carefully about getting engaged in the world. I have nothing but admiration for the political engagement of younger voters. And at the same time, the older voters who have been the traditional, classically more conservative voter, are moving away from Trump and Trumpism remarkably fast, and all the polling is really, really good right now. having said that, it's sadly not true that it's just a bunch of old white guys who are driving this kind of bad politics and we'll all be okay soon. Let me point you to Stephen Miller as a classic example of a young, very militant, clearly engaged in white supremacist language, political operative who unfortunately has real skill, right? And the reason so much of the anti-immigrant work from this administration in particular has been so cruel is that Miller and his minions actually know how to use the levers of government to make horrible policy outcomes happen. That's not true throughout the Trump administration. It is unfortunately true there.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Folks like Stephen Miller and others who are young and savvy, and there's some others who are out there as well who are aligned with so-called alt-right movements. And in some respects, you can say kind of that younger generation, the rising star white nationalists. They've been very useful for that movement in terms of being able to change the language and the lexicon to make it seem acceptable, to make it seem less clannish. They're not wearing white hoods, but they're using very sophisticated digital strategies and also messaging. Talk about you go into this in your briefing as well, Simon, about populist conspiracy theories. How pervasive are those? I remember having over the past couple of weekends conversations with a family member about the conspiracy theory that's been on the rise or being revisited about United Nations Article 21, for example, right? And trying to explain to them, hey, listen, this is like a white nationalist conspiracy theory. I don't know if you know, and here's some good reading to get you all caught up on how like dangerous this type of misinformation is. Talk about the role and the prevalence of conspiracy theories and how we dismantle them.
Yeah, so conspiracy theories are an essential component of this kind of politics. Right? You have to first not necessarily convince voters not to believe in the other side, but you have to convince them not to believe in anything. And the point of conspiracy theories is not to make them believe the conspiracy theory is true. It's to stop them believing in anything. Which is why the conspiracy theories don't even need to make much sense, right? Or don't need to be consistent. By the way, Putin and his friends have figured this out a long time ago. And they play this game very well. Although, to their credit, a lot of Russians are now giving up on them. So, yeah, the conspiracy theory is central. It doesn't, to some extent, matter what the conspiracy theory is, which means that every time, you play the whack-a-mole game of demolishing one and then another one pops up. But the point of them is to destroy confidence. And so the way you deal with conspiracy theories is to build confidence, is to show that you are on the side of the voter, that you deliver, that you are honest, and crucially, that you call out those who use conspiracy theories for what they are really doing, which is trying to keep power and trying to steal money. Because in the end, there's a simple goal here. If you make voters distrust everything, then you can win power by promising them the world, and you can use that power, as this administration has shown so clearly, to take things.
How worried are you, Simon? And putting a briefing like this together, especially, and you watch this, you look at this, you operate in this space and you study this very closely on a regular basis, but in the middle of a pandemic, which has resulted in a global economic meltdown and a fast-moving one at that, especially when we look at the United States and the high unemployment levels. So this adds a lot more gasoline to the fire, doesn't it? Yeah. How worried are you about that? And what have we have? Where in other times in history have we seen similar conditions?
Look, conspiracy theories thrive when people feel that they don't have control and they don't understand what's going on. And I mean, we are in a position in which a lot of people completely understandably feel that the world has gone in a horrible direction.
Yeah.
I am both extremely confident in the future of this country because I see massive mobilization everywhere, right, throughout the country, asking for racial justice, asking for freedom, asking for the genuine equality that was promised in the Declaration of Independence. I mean, it's incredibly moving and positive. At the same time, that is creating a reaction, and the reaction by people who know that they can't win a majority in this country. And so they are going to double down on threats of violence. They're going to double down on hatred. They're going to double down on trying to keep us apart and keeping us hating each other. So, yeah, I am worried. And I'm worried that this language will result in violence. I'm worried that this will egg people on who think of themselves as supporters of the old white supremacist ideas in new guise to go and commit serious acts of violence. And those will be caused by the politicians who traffic in this language, and they should not be allowed to get away with it.
You know, talking about conspiracy theories, white supremacist rhetoric and language, we've looked at the history, and I want to get your thoughts, Simon, if I could, before we let you go. The role of education in all of this, you know, or educators more specifically. Like we had the South Dakota governor over the weekend who was saying that the removal of Confederate statues, and quoting her, discredits the nation's principles and founders, like as if like the folks who founded the Confederacy were founders of the nation, and that's just all just patently incorrect. It's like, it's not like she should have got an F in her social studies class. So, but speaking of that, what's the role of educators in a moment like this, K through 12 level, and even going on to higher education, collegiate institutions? But I wonder about that too, about like how children, the type of information and textbooks that children are being fed right now at a time like this.
So I was having this conversation with a high school teacher from Philadelphia yesterday. And absolutely fascinating conversation about how his students have become fascinated by history, are asking the right questions. He had just taught the Kerner Commission report, which was obviously directly relevant to what was happening in the country. And there's a real sense of engagement, particularly in history, right now among American youth, which I am full of admiration for. And whoever the teachers are who are helping these young men and women understand the flawed but extraordinarily powerful history of their country and how this country has failed and failed again, but always tried. Those teachers deserve all of our praise and thanks because they're bringing up a great generation.
Yeah, you know, that's going to be real important is that education piece. So we've been talking with Simon Clark, who's a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. When you get a moment, check out his report, his brief. It's a good read, How White Supremacy Returned to Mainstream Politics. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more on that. Very informative, insightful read. We have him on as every right now and then we do, so we got to get him back. Especially over the course of this election. I'm sure you're going to be watching that closely, Simon, and how this all plays out. He joins us here on Reality Check from Washington, D.C. Simon, thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
And Charles, thank you, and thanks for your audience.
All right, take care. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, phone lines are open. Phone lines are wide open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour work day, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except they're working. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity. Local 332, Sam Staton Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staton, Executive Director of LESIT.
Be heard. Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media.
Warning. If you're drowning in debt you can't afford, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to pay it all back, because you don't. What the credit card companies don't want you to know is that there's actually a way to get debt-free without paying off your entire debt or going bankrupt. If you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt, you have the right to let us settle that debt for a fraction of what you owe. For free information, call Credit Associates now. 1-800-965-5269. We'll even show you how much money you could save. If you can't afford to pay off all your debt, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to. Call Credit Associates for free information on how to get debt-free faster than you ever thought possible, without debt consolidation or bankruptcy. We depend on your success and offer a guarantee, so there's no risk to call. For free information, call now. 1-800-965-5269. That's 1-800-965-5269. 1-800-965-5269.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. And to the congressman's point earlier on, just he was making a point about like that we're not just seeing those spikes in violence in Philadelphia, although it's really concerning in Philadelphia, particularly for the local listening audience. We are seeing spikes in violence in, especially over the weekend, in a number of major American cities. Chicago had a bad weekend. They had about 60 people shot. I think it was 14 of them lost their lives out of those 16, and that was out of 49 separate shooting incidents within Chicago alone. And then we have in Philadelphia, obviously, we have shooting incidents or violence are up 57% from last year. And homicides obviously up by 27% from the same time. In Milwaukee, homicides jumped 95%. So for 95% so far this year, they've had about 82 homicides in Milwaukee in 2020, still compared to Philadelphia's 210 in 2020. And in Los Angeles, actually, they saw a really worrisome spike in violence there. And this is in the first week of, actually saw some violence over the weekend, but in the first week of June alone, they had about a 250% spike in homicide compared to the previous week. So that was in June in Los Angeles. And New York has seen a 44% spike in shootings to about 511 shootings from 355 during the same period in 2019. Now, there have been about, but interestingly enough, in New York, city of nearly 9 million people, they've had 176 murders compared to Philadelphia, where you've had 210 murders and in a city of 1.6 million. So, so spikes in violence a little bit higher in New York. Any homicide or any death is tragic, obviously. But when you compare a city as massive as New York to Philadelphia, more people have been murdered in Philadelphia, which is a much smaller city than New York City. So we're seeing, also saw spikes in violence in places like Atlanta as well. So all this is happening while we've got pandemic going on. We've got this really divisive, caustic politics that makes this election season a lot more uncertain. And then you've got this big debate going on about what to do about policing and defund the police department. I wonder about that too. I wonder about like where that debate is headed, where that conversation is headed, how police unions are also kind of behind the scenes directing their members or directing police officers if to kind of in a way, in a sort of indirect way, make certain cities like a Philadelphia, like a Chicago, like a New York, like a LA or Milwaukee or elsewhere or in Atlanta, make them seem less safe to show, it's just sort of a spiteful way of showing, hey, see, you need us. You want to talk about defunding us, but you need us. Look at how all this violence is going up. But also how that looks to the broader electorate during this election year. You heard the president's language over the weekend during this July 4th weekend about like how the cities are becoming unsafe. Violence is going up. And so it could be used to, just be wondering, I'm just wondering like how that could be used to effective messaging and how, now Danielle Moody made a very good point during Pressing Matters National. We've got to stop operating so much in a space where we're constantly worried about how like white folks think or how they react to things or how they vote. But at the end of the day, white people are still like, the overwhelming majority of the electorate. They're still 65% of the electorate. So, kind of how they vote still matters. It still counts. It's still going to kind of take things in a certain direction. We look at black people who are like just 13% of the electorate. And then we also look at the role that like other demographic groups will play as well. And, so those groups are going to have to, which is why, we've talked about like in terms of political strategy, in terms of winning this presidential election and Senate election, and to push back against these sorts of developments, groups are going to have to team up in order to offset some of that. But I wonder about this politically, how all this is going to play out. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Sister Murray out of Northern Liberties, who's calling for a reality check. Sister Murray?
Yes, Charles, how are you? It's a pleasure to hear from you. I hope you had a great weekend. Charles, we're dealing with a lot of distractions, and distractions from everywhere, every way that you can think of. But I want people not to forget that when we had all the looting going on in the city of Philadelphia and all of the pharmacists got hit, all those narcotics and drugs was taken out of there, where do you think that they went? They hit our streets.
Yeah.
So imagine with all the stuff that's going on, and with the heat and people taking all these pills and things that they don't even know what they're taking, but it's out there on our streets. And it was all a distraction so that number 45 can continue to destroy us. And we have to talk to our children and tell them, do not take any of these things that they're selling on these streets. Yeah. And it's not like they don't know that they're out there, Charles. They know that they're out there. And another thing that's so alarming, when you see number 45 campaign ad on TV, it should be taken off television. It is not to defund the police. It is to help the police become better policemen and get rid of the bad policing. Charles, we have so many distractions. Also, Kanye West, a big distraction. He doesn't know what he's doing. I'm sure somebody paid him to get out there and do that.
He can't. I mean, it's too late. I wouldn't even really put too much stock in that. I mean, it's too late for him to even get on most state ballots. So, that's kind of the untold story with that, so try not to worry about Kanye West too much. But yeah, to your point though, Sister Murray, it's a big distraction. It's just to get people like off their game.
Yes. Thank you, Charles. And make sure everybody continues to support WRD and buy us membership. Thank you.
No, thank you, Sister Murray. I appreciate you. Definitely continue to buy those onWURD memberships so you can continue to keep black media outlets, independent, black-owned black media outlets like WURD, continue to keep us informational so we can continue to serve you and continue to deliver programs like this one, like Reality Check, to you every day, daily. So we appreciate you, and so just continue to show a little appreciation for us, but show how much you need us and how essential we are, because we are. We try to do that, and so it's a very very tough and laborious job, but we definitely put lots of energy into it, and that takes resources and time. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. So, go back to some of Sister Mary's comments. I mean, yeah, that takes that's that community effort that she's talking about in terms of just sort of being wary of or being aware of these sorts of developments that are taking place in our neighborhoods and trying to figure out a way where we can collectively be a part of the solution, particularly as, we're in these uncertain times. Like, how do we do that as a community? So, but there has to be an equal amount of, and going back to that conversation earlier on with Congressman Evans, he makes a point, and he's right to a degree. But he's right. It's got to be a collective community effort. It's got to be grassroots, and so we all, as community members, as neighbors, as residents, we have to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to act collectively as a community to take charge and to also fight back against these sorts of trends. But if you're going to give equal time to that conversation, you also got to give equal time to, okay, well, what exactly is Philadelphia's elected nonprofit business foundational medical institution and academic institution community doing about this problem too? You got to give equal time to that conversation as well. And so you're going to have to give us a sense as an elected official. Congressman Evans has to give us a sense, and anyone else, hey, you know what, we're having very close talks with, we understand this is a very alarming time. And we're having very close talks with everyone, grass tops to grassroots across the board, about what do we do and how do we act as a community? What are the existing assets that we have in the community or in a city as Philadelphia? Because those assets are still there. So not all hope is lost. And so what demands are we making of these institutions that are based in, headquartered in Philadelphia, who build their brands off of Philadelphia, right? Build their institutions off of the location. And okay, well, what are you investing in this effort to push back on it? Because this violence, it hurts you too. It hurts your bottom line. It's hard for, say, for example, after a while, Philly is a dangerous city. Everything opens up. We even get the pandemic under control, but we don't get the violence under control. Then why are people going to want to come to Philly to do business or have meetings or have conferences if they know it's a dangerous place, right? If people are just all over the place are getting shot. So you have to think of that in terms of, sort of the business calculus, just moral imperative aside, how does this benefit you, various institutions, elite institutions that are operating in Philly? Because I'm having those conversations on a nearly daily basis where people are like, well, it seems kind of dangerous there. It's kind of dangerous. People are kind of half joking. Hey, Charles, your hometown's getting kind of lit up these days. What's going on there? I don't know if I want to go there. So, you have to think about that. And so that's the thing with what Congressman Evans, he spent a lot of time talking about, okay, what the community has to do. He's right on that. Spend equal time on, okay, well, sir, what sorts of conversations are you having with those major elite institutions, business, academic, research institutions, medical institutions in Philadelphia? See what kinds of investments they can make. And we're not seeing that yet. We're not seeing that big movement of folks who are saying, okay, well, this is like the money a pot that we're willing, or the investment we're willing to make, even in terms in a time of pandemic, to make the situation better. Okay, we got calls from Yusuf out of Oak Lane and also Tahira out of Ohio. Let's take a break. And when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
So you just finished binge watching that entire TV series? Now it's time to binge listen at WordRadio.com. Check out our archives of WURD on demand and listen to some of the most memorable moments from your favorite hosts. Word Radio on demand. Check it out right now at WordRadio.com/podcasts.
Dietz & Watson has been making premium meats and artisan cheeses for over 80 years. And when it comes to stacking sandwiches and party platters, they've got something for everyone in the family, like maple honey turkey breast, American cheese, buffalo chicken, and more. So get to your local deli and taste 4 generations of family recipes. With Dietz & Watson on the table, you'll have everyone coming back for seconds and thirds. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
These are unprecedented times.
challenging how the YMCA works to strengthen community as we have for nearly 170 years. But we've always found ways to help people and communities in times of crisis. Right now, Ys across the country are providing emergency childcare, shelter, food programs, and outreach to seniors. But we can't do it alone. Whether you're connected to the Y or have a fond Y memory, we need you to stay with us. Reach out to your local Y today and stay with us for a better us.
This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Let's go to the phone lines. Yusuf out of Oakland has been holding patiently for a reality check. Yusuf, what's good?
Yes, you always talk about the environment a lot, but you haven't been talking about it lately since we had the mild winter that just went past.
Yeah.
And, all right.
We still talk about it. We've just been talking about different elements of it, but we still talk about it. We talk about it pretty much every week here. But I hear you, though, Yusuf. It's a lot to cover, though. It's a lot to unpack. But go ahead.
We're under a lot of duress. You know, you got the COVID-19, you got a state alert that you don't catch that, and then you got the flying bullets that don't have no names on it, just go wherever they go, and you got the high murder rate. Now, right out in the Colorado, Utah area, they're having a drought right now. And you remember how you was talking about how it's getting hotter and it's getting hotter? Well, we haven't had much rain lately. Remember, we got a lot of rain back like in February and March. And for some reason, as June came here, it seems like it slowed down. And it drizzled here and there. And it's been in the 90s over and over. All this month, it's almost been like in the 90s every day in the last month. And I haven't seen I've seen very little rain around here. And my thought is, do we have to worry about a drought over here? Because if a drought comes, that's a serious thing when people are desperate for water. They're already desperate to get away from this COVID-19. They're already desperate to avoid those flying bullets. And now you got this drought, and then you got the uprising where people don't want to be, victims of police violence. I mean, what more duress do we have to be under? If this drought comes, there's going to be some issues over here, man.
Yeah, it is.
There's something about this global warming and the fact that it's getting hotter and hotter, and we're seeing less and less rain. And already, if you go on your line, you'll see that they are suffering a drought out in the Utah, Colorado area.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, man.
No, you're right. In fact, because there's a drought monitor. You've got like the government puts out and the National Weather Service has regional climate centers. There's also a National Centers for Environmental Information, which has a Northeast Regional Climate Center, and they actually saw that 14% of the northeastern United States right now, which Philadelphia is a part of, is in a state of moderate drought, what they're calling moderate drought. 31% of the Northeast right now is abnormally dry compared to last week, because they do this weekly, when 16% of the Northeast was in moderate drought and 26% was abnormally dry. So we are seeing steady increases in terms of drought conditions or moderate drought conditions in the Northeast U.S. I don't have those exact numbers for what southeastern PA is looking like, but southeastern PA, Philly, is part of the Northeast. But we are seeing, to your point, Yusuf, it's something we have to look at. And in fact, there's rain that's forecasted today and rain forecasted all week. But generally speaking, isn't enough rain to while we have those, we have to kind of keep a wary eye on drought conditions overall throughout the country and the heat. So Philly is one of the hottest big cities or major cities in the country, always is. And so how does that heat translate into violence? Because there are direct correlations, direct linkages between heat and violence, or upticks or increases in violence. We see that all the time. That's been proven. Yusuf, thanks for that. But we'll talk more about it at a later point. Let me go to Tahir out of Ohio, who's calling in for a reality check. Tahir.
Hey, the
Brother Charles. Good morning, sir. So
good morning.
A couple of things that has been just near and dear to my heart for a while. And Chicago, just that whole violence piece that has really impacted a lot of families there. It's just sad. And a lot of young girls have been victimized in that violence as well.
Yeah.
And, when I think about Chicago, and I've been there several times. My mother used to live in Oak Park, which is right outside of the West Side. You have President Obama, who was an activist that come from there, Rainbow Coalition, Jesse Jackson's organization, and the Nation of Islam, just to name a few international organizations and people that have come from that town. And I'm not picking on them, but I'm talking about the violence and those organizations and people who have come from that town. And again, from my standpoint, have absolutely have just been helpless in trying to not trying and dealing with that. And it's a shame. And I'm very angry at President Obama for that because there's just no excuse. And I get it. People may have different with me on this. Well, he's needed for this national push on voting and this, that. I get all that. But I am still very angry that he has come from that town and the number of years that he, quote, unquote, spent as an activist, as well as Minister Farrakhan, and Jesse Jackson. And, it's just no excuse. This is between the three of them and the quote unquote power brokering that they're supposed to have. It's no excuse. And I personally think that the reason why Chicago, our community, continues to suffer is because the drug issue there is just so lucrative, and the whole criminal element that no one wants to see that go away. Now, just very quickly before I leave, I just want to go to Philadelphia real quick. Because I've spent 60 years there. Philadelphia, they have a great opportunity right now, as well as Chicago, but let's just say Philadelphia because I know the landscape a lot better. They have a great opportunity right now to identify those leaders, those young leaders of the protest that come from the neighborhoods, and really get them involved and make them a part of the solution, because some of those young people, a number of those young people involved in the protest are showing some great passion, great leadership skills, and, the answer in terms of maybe how to really help our community right now lies right there as an opportunity. And I say that to say you also have a number of city council people that have been around for years that have come from our community. And it's their opportunity, really, to identify some of those young people, and in addition to their passion for what they're protesting for.
Exactly. And to that point, too, Tahir, I got to let you go so I can make some room for some other calls. But to your point, as far as young people, identifying those young people with those talents and skill sets and making investments in those young people. And I'm not just talking about in terms of time or giving them like new platforms or like making investments in terms of like, for example, like, and I outlined this in a column I wrote for the Philadelphia Citizen last week, like, paying them for like their work on political campaigns or in mobilization movements, or looking for like tangible things that they can do that actually provide them with either some, where you're taking them seriously, you provide them with some form of stipend or payment, or some sort of credit, something that actually works towards something, whether that be towards like a degree or something else, that we really need to here's point. We really need to stop paying young people lip service, particularly when it comes to moments like this, and start really putting in the kinds of investments that are necessary to show that that we appreciate what they're doing. We appreciate that kind of energy. And no, I appreciate you saying that to here. Let me go on. I want to keep these phone lines open. I want to make sure I get everyone on. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Prince out of Schuylkill, who's calling in for a reality check. Prince.
Hey, Charles, how are you?
Hey, what's happening?
Good. I'm going to be quick. When paycheck politicians get on and talk about the collectiveness of the community, and I always go back to these 3 or 4 things. One, the COVID testing shouldn't have just been for essentials, should have been for everybody. The violence shouldn't just be taking places in certain areas. You know, it shouldn't be taking places at all, because that was one of the commitments you made when we got a new police chief. And all of the African-American businesses that have gone out of business during this time of this pandemic, you know, not the ones that had, you know, the restart. We have a lot that just went out of business, you know, because the back rent and the IOUs were just too heavy, and they couldn't remortgage the house, you know. And so those things are important before a paycheck politician keep talking about this collectivism, because it hadn't been seen during this pandemic right here. This is one of the worst organized situations from a Philadelphia perspective that really hurt poor people and the ones they call non-essential. It damaged a whole group, a whole segment of people that were already distressed. And another thing, I think your mayor has lost control of his city. I really do, because the fireworks displays was ridiculous, man. I seen an 80-year-old woman come outside her house to try to ask people who didn't live in her neighborhood to stop firing off those rockets so close to her house.
Yeah.
And they got this new thing where they point them at each other and then fire them out and stuff like that. And so I think there's a level of irresponsibility in this system, in this city, with the politicians, because they're getting a paycheck. They're not as hungry to survive.
I keep telling people, I don't think people really realize this. I'm going to tell it again. Mayor Jim Kenney is responsible in a very large degree for the state of fireworks in Philadelphia. I mean, he's the one that like aligned state fireworks laws with city fireworks law. He updated the fire code to allow for the pervasiveness of fireworks that you're seeing right now. He just did that on July 3rd, 2019. A lot of people don't realize that. And that was after people gave him a second term. So he's like, okay, well, I guess, I'll just go ahead and, nobody's going to notice this. But that's there. It's like, why would you do that? Like, you're doing that. That was in the middle of the summer, and the violence was high last summer in Philly. So you're going to do that in the middle of a violence crisis. It's just so tone deaf, and it's just so ludicrous and insanely stupid to do something like that. Like think, dude. Really think about that. Like, fireworks, I'm going to update the fire code to make it more liberal to obtain or to utilize fireworks in the state of Philadelphia. And so no wonder you got 31 people in the city being shot over the weekend. It just defies all logic. I do not understand what's going through the minds of some of these people or some of these folks who are calling themselves running the city. Like that to me, that's a no-brainer. Like, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should kind of like buckle up or buckle back against the state on that. And maybe I could even make a thing out of it. A movement. We're not allowing fireworks in this city because, we got a gun violence problem here. No, this dude, he actually updated the fire code to make it more convenient, to make it more, comfortable. I mean, it's not as convenient as it is in other places in the state. I don't understand that. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Prince, wrap it up. Prince is, he left us. Let me go to Maurice out of Southwest. But thanks for pointing it out, Prince. Let me go to Maurice out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check.
Charles.
Hey, what's happening?
Listen, man, I'm going to have to give the city a reality check. This comes from
go ahead,
brother, because I respect you so much.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Fireworks are part of gentrification, brother. If you ain't figured it out, I don't know why not. This is to make sure that we're out there in. How do you expect people with this virus, even if everything goes back to the way it was, we only had 2% of the businesses. I'm talking about black people in the whole city.
Right.
So what do you expect murder and chaos when there's no hope for the future?
Yeah.
What kind of hope can you take from 2.5%? What hope can you take from that the police do not live in the city and they don't care about us? The police union moved out of the city, and they might be in the Northeast, but that's considered moving out of the city, so they don't even have to look at us or hear our cries anymore. We can't protest in front of there because it's too far away. We're not paying attention to what's going on. Our city council, the disciples of hell that I call them, know how the city is and know what we need, but they're not giving it to us. You know, one thing they could have did during this thing, they want to get businesses started again, especially back. They could have said, all right, all business licenses for vending and everything is half price for 1 week.
Yeah.
And they could have got an upstart and young guys starting their businesses by getting them a little help. But no, they don't want vending in the city like it was. 52nd Street used to be a harbor for black business. If you walk up 52nd Street, you might find 3 or 4 black businesses, and I'm talking about from marking from Arch to Pine. That's where the strip is. It's nothing there.
Yeah.
No black businesses. So, you know, I hear people crying about the shootings and the crime. What do you expect? Now you can't tell the fireworks from the gunfire because of the fireworks.
Right.
Just look at this weekend. The reason these young guys are doing it because they don't see no light at the end of the tunnel. I talk to them every day. They all know I used to be law enforcement. I still get the respect because I talk to them on the real business. I try to tell them, look at your neighborhood. It's millions of dollars here. All you got to do is open up a store. But they don't see that.
I mean, if you truly, you're right, Maurice. I mean, if you truly want to save a city, I mean, you got to make that kind of investment. You got to make that kind of investment. You do.
Like you said, Charles, they on vacation.
They are on vacation. I know that this irritates certain members of city council, including the president, to no end when people talk about this. I'm telling you, like, I'm not the only one, and I'm not the only one saying it. It's recess is recess. It's like when we were kids. And they say recess. What'd you do when they said the word recess? You ran outside. Like, you were like, recess, yeah, you know, because that's break time. Recess means break time.
Hey, Charles.
So I don't understand how you can like think, oh no, recess means we're just doing other kinds of business. That's not how people are taking it. People are taking it that in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a violence crisis, particularly a gun violence crisis and a fireworks crisis. Let's just be straight up with that, which is compounding the violence crisis. And poverty and high unemployment that's going on too. You take a recess. How does that look? It's like, you know, you have to ask that question. Who does that? Who does that? I don't get it. Go ahead. Yeah, real quick.
As long as you've been on the air here, I've been saying the same thing every week about city council. The same thing. I never changed. Because they're not friends of mine. I don't know them personally. I only know but from job performance. And I haven't seen job performance. That's the problem. The head of city council, he wants to live in that spot till he retires. He has no expectations of being the mayor. He just stated this weekend that he wants to stay in city council. He wants to be the president forever. So what I'm saying is, where is the dream and the hopes? I don't see it in city council, your specialty now. Do you ever hear them speaking about the concerns of the black community? I don't see one council person.
I mean, in all fairness, I mean, they do. They address those things. I mean, I'm not. They may. And Maurice, let's just clarify, because I mean, we have to be fair here when we and just correct and complete when we're making those assessments. I mean, city council, more than a lot of other city councils I do watch and know about carefully, they will talk about, like, okay, black, it may not be to our liking. It may not be to your liking. It may not be as optimal as we'd want it, right? But they're talking about it, right? I mean, they were just, what was it? Like, I think it was, they had introduced legislation for like a black it was like a resolution, but it was a resolution for a black stimulus package in the city of Philadelphia. I haven't seen a big city like that introduce a resolution. So, I mean, that conversation is taking place within Philadelphia City Council. I don't want to be unnecessarily like ragging on them and unfair in the assessments. But yeah, to your point, my point, they've got to strike a better tone of urgency here. We had the same conversation last year. Seems like we have this conversation all the time. I mean, you can really mobilize and activate the city and the residency by doing certain things, and we just keep missing that. We keep missing that opportunity. Let me do LC out of Old City, who's calling in for a reality check. LC?
Good afternoon, Mr. Ellison. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon. How you doing?
Coming along, doing the best I can, as they say.
Yeah.
A couple of things. This situation with the spike in this violence. I mean, this once again is what it looks to me like it's all by design. You know, we've been through drugs, the fact that we had so many of our families that the husbands or whoever the man of the house was, you know, was no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
We have this super high unemployment in our community, especially. Nobody's concerned, it appears, that no one of any prominence or anyone with any power is moving to take care of that situation. I think that would help. Don't you think that would help improving the employment situation?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So
yeah,
that
I mean that's you have a situation here where it's like people have, you know, a lot of people perpetrating that kind of violence. You know, they have lost. They've lost all optimism or sense of hope.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, as far as like the situation in the city, I mean, the poverty.
Can you blame them year after year after year?
You know, yeah, I'm not going to say can you blame them,
I'm not
but
saying,
I can say like it's no wonder why things are the way they are. Because I'm not going to, at the same time, you know, people engage in violence like that.
You're not going to fault people for being hopeless.
Yeah.
At least I'm not. Let me put it that way. I'm not.
Yeah.
And I just
but LC, I will say I'm going to fault people for engaging in violence like that where other people are getting harmed.
I'm not condoning violence. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I can understand people being disillusioned. To say what is going to happen, what's going to happen to me and my family, what am I going to do? And they're trying to do something. It may not be right, but they're trying to do something. But here's my next concern: the guns. You're telling me the Philadelphia Police Department can't do a better job of tracking these guns and seeing that we don't have this deluge of guns in our neighborhoods? And how about the solving of the crimes?
Yeah.
What is that percentage? I really don't know, but I know it's
last
not
we
that
checked.
high.
Last we checked, it's a 40% clearance rate.
40%.
Yeah, it's low.
I mean, how many people are really that concerned if it's 40% of the crimes is all that they're solving?
Of homicides, yeah, that's right.
And then
that's
the other thing I want to mention is the fact that the police, they refused to move to that new building, that renovated building that was going to be in West Philly, and they insisted that they had to have another building. So how much money did we lose as a city based on that situation? And then one last thing I want to cover is back in 2013, I think it was, that former Commissioner Ramsey was the commissioner, and he had the Justice Department come in to examine the Philadelphia Police Department.
Yeah.
Now, National Action Network had put in several requests to the Department of Justice to come in and deal with the police brutality in our city. You know, they ended up they were examined, and they came up with this document. It's on the Department of Justice website. I believe it's under the term COPS, community. I forget what COPS stands for. But nevertheless, they came up with several ways to make improvements and corrections in the Philadelphia Police Department. I'd like to know how many of those items did they really deal with, and why are we still having police brutality in the city of Philadelphia at the rate that we are? I want to thank you very much for allowing me to share this. And I wanted to leave some information with Troy. It's Troy, right? Mr. Troy? Yes, for Dr. Potter.
Okay.
If I can.
Okay. Or just, either Troy or you can email me directly as well.
Well,
Ms. Elsie.
I just wanted to just give him a message over the phone. He could just share that with you. Okay?
Okay, thank
you so much.
All right. Appreciate you. All right. Let's take a break because we came up on break. Very interesting and heated discussion too. But Ms. Elsie, email it to me. C. Ellison at WordRadio, WURDradio.com, because I think Troy might be like going in between breaks and it might be a little bit of activity on the back end behind the scenes. So I just want to make sure that comes through. C. Ellison at WordRadio, especially if you're trying to reach a contributor directly with something. C. Ellison at WURDradio.com. I think you might have my email too, Ms. Elsie. I appreciate you. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, I think we're supposed to be talking with Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint. And we're going to continue to talk about emergency preparedness. What keeps disaster preparedness leaders up at night? That's the conversation coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staton Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staton, Executive Director of LESIT.
This is Word Radio, independent black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app as well, throughout the region and throughout the nation and world. To go to @EllisonReport on Twitter.com, also hashtag Reality Check, and I know many of you are watching us at Facebook.com/4word. Well, we'll get to y'all soon. And on YouTube.com/onWURD as well. Nicolette Lewis-Saint is Executive Director of Healthcare Ready, where we have weekly conversations about this pandemic and also how important emergency and disaster preparedness is in times like these. Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint joining us here on Reality Check, as she does this time every Monday. How are you doing?
Hey there, I'm all right. How are you?
All right, hanging in there. So just trying to stay indoors as much as possible.
Yes.
So, how do you know, Nicolette, let me ask you this. How do you know what I noticed? There is like this, there's like this shaming that's going on, right? For folks that are cautious, like us, like I'm cautious.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I don't have to go anywhere, I'm not going anywhere. But then people are like, you ain't going out this weekend, or everyone wants to acknowledge the pandemic, but then they want to like shame you or humble brag you to death about how they're going out. And I'm like, well, I don't want to get sick. But
I don't know
how do you handle that?
Line. The line I've been hearing is, but you still have to live.
Right.
First and foremost, it's 90-something degrees where I am right now, and I think most of the East Coast is having a heat wave. And so if you are among the few that are fortunate enough to have air conditioning, why not stay inside? Just start there. So let's begin there. But I think there is this, the humble brag and the shaming that's going on around the pandemic, and I think some of it is that Americans are not used to being this uncomfortable and for this long, and the idea that we have to stay indoors, we have to do things that we don't necessarily want to do. It seems like you're being forced into it, and I just don't give it credence. It's dangerous to be in large mixes of people. I've seen tons of picnics, and folks have said, well, it's all family. Well, if it's not family that lives in the house with you, then it's still dangerous. And for me, it's not worth giving credence. It is sometimes worth a conversation to say, let's talk about risk, because the other thing that does happen is if you are in mixed company, going to the supermarket or seeing someone occasionally who is not taking those precautions, maybe you need to think twice about being in mixed company with those people, whether it be once a week or otherwise. And so it's, I understand the genesis of it, but to me, it's not even worth giving credence, because in addition to it being 95 degrees outside, if you are fortunate enough to have a home that is safe and that is air conditioned right now, you also have to consider the fact that we are actually worse off in the pandemic right now by the number of cases and the number of states that are significantly above their previous case counts than we were in March.
Wow. Yeah, talk about how bad it has gotten, because I think that people have sort of become immune to the news, constant pandemic news and information, and being, bombarded with that, especially over several months of quarantine, lockdown, stay at home. I'm not sure if like the enormity of the current situation and how bad it's gotten has really gotten through to people. But from your vantage point, from what you're saying and being on the front line of that, how bad it's worse than we've seen it in past months.
Yes. We are at a point with just the number of individuals currently infected with COVID, that we are again concerned about intensive care unit, ICU bed capacity. We are again concerned because there are a number of states that are seeing record case counts day after day. A number of states that have had to reconsider or revisit their reopening policies because they are seeing cases skyrocket. We're seeing people on beaches, and then 2 to 7 days later, seeing those states where they did have beaches open report record numbers of cases. So not only are we not out of the woods, at one point we were talking about flattening the curve. And if you actually look at what the curve looks like for the U.S., most people can think about, that bell shape. It kind of goes up, it peaks, and then it curves down. What we saw is we hit that top, and then we flattened out a little bit, and then we went back up. So it looks more like a step or a staircase, if you will, than a flattening of a curve. So we really have to understand that we are seeing more cases We are seeing the infection spread across the country. It's not just one state. There are some states that are worse than others, but we are seeing the infection spread at rates that should be significantly concerning, because we not only have we not flattened the curve, we are actually hitting a new peak entirely. Again, think about it like a staircase. The staircase, that step would have been flattening and then ideally going down. Instead, we are going up.
Going up. That's not good. Are you at all encouraged by, or do you, well, first, I guess this is like a 2 or 3 part question. First, do you see signs that public officials, because we can't really rely on anything consistent or even credible from the federal government on this. So we really have to put a lot of confidence in state and local governments to act right. Are you starting to see signals that some states are coming around? Because it's more in the states. The onus seems to be more in the governors, for example, than like, it seems like mayors for the most part get it, but then they have to deal with states and the governors, and it depends on the political party of the governors. But are you starting to see them kind of come around a little bit?
I've seen a mix. I think you've got mayors, you've got elected officials and like state and local legislatures, and then you have governors. But then you also have, the part of the federal government that we should be paying more attention to, Health and Human Services, and even the parts of the federal government that have more of a local presence, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, those folks. I've seen them pushing out the same messages, but again, to go back to the original question, I think I've seen a mix, because I think for the elected officials, whether that be at the state, local level, I'm seeing a tension between how do we get it and push out a message that aligns with public health, and how do we preserve our economy. And I've seen both. What I have seen, though, is a recognition that it doesn't have to be an either or, and maybe they do need to think about safe reopenings. Maybe they do need to think about it by zip code or something of that nature. But I think at this point, there are a number of states that have seen continued surges day after day. They're reaching record case count numbers that are coming back and saying, maybe we just need to shut everything down. Maybe we need to take a step back. And I think that's important. The problem is that it has to happen at the state or the regional level, or it's not successful. And so it's not enough to just rely on your local officials to make the right call, because emergency response is a networked system. What we all do collectively determines how we fare locally. And that's the part that has continued to be a challenge during this particular response.
We're talking with Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, Executive Director of Healthcare Ready. Go to healthcareready.org for more information, also tips and resources on how you can manage through this pandemic. She's at DRN Lewis-Saint to engage her on social media there. She's joining us here, as she does every Monday, to talk about the emergency, the alarming times that we're in, and how to navigate it here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open too, by the way, if you have a question. While we got her for a little bit more time, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. You write about this recently in the Chronicle of Philanthropy, Nicolette, about what keeps you up at night as a disaster preparedness leader. And we kind of touched on this last time we had our conversation, but there's a number of things. You kind of touched on it already in this conversation. I wonder, because we're talking about the pandemic, we're worried about that. One thing we had talked about extensively before you came on was rising gun violence that's happening in a number of cities, Philly being one of them. We had a really bad weekend in Philly, Chicago, LA, Milwaukee, Baltimore. So it's getting bad. So how are we now managing this? And it's happening as coronavirus is actually getting worse. We just haven't figured out a way to bring that back. So how are we kind of managing all of that at once?
So I think one of the challenges in public health is that public health is the system that deals with mental health and social services. It deals with chronic care prevention. It deals with these types of pandemic type emergencies. It deals with the whole gamut. And when you have the system significantly strained in one direction, it makes it difficult to focus on other things. And I think, from our vantage point, community violence does have to be dealt with from an emergency management perspective. There's certainly a role and a consideration, but often, really, that comes back to your point about local officials. That is about how the local officials, whether that be the police commissioner, the health commissioner, because some of these cities, even the ones that you've mentioned, do have linkages between the police and the public health authority, so that they are treating mental health needs and social unrest and other inequities as a part of addressing community violence. But it's mixed. I think right now what we've seen is, in addition to just folks being cooped up, not everyone, there's social conditions that are straining how people are able to interact. The fact that folks have been at home for so long, not everyone is in a safe environment. It is the summer. We do know that we do see spikes in violence in the summertime. Kids that normally would have programs to go into, recreational centers to go to, do not have those options. There's a range of conditions that are being caused by the pandemic, or at least not being allayed by the pandemic, that certainly could be contributors to it. And I think from the system perspective, a lot of the leaders that would be pushing a lot of their energy or finding solutions related to community gun violence are being strained because they are also working on COVID, or the solutions that they would normally employ can't be employed because of COVID.
Yeah. No, that's, especially like you were saying earlier, like just as we started this conversation, where you're like, if you have the ability, or you have the advantage or the opportunity to use air conditioning, if you have air conditioning in your household, then stay in. Not everyone has that kind of ability, or has the the resources to even get an AC or a window unit or anything like that. There are people without AC, without air conditioning, even in this day and age. And I grew up without air conditioning in the household, and it's tough. Especially in a city like Philly, where the summers get like hot and they get very steamy, and they start early. Even back when I was growing up, and so it was just difficult. It's difficult to do things like even basic things like getting homework done, depending on what part of the house you were in, including my room, which happened to be the hottest room in the house at the time. So it was like the hot. It was like I couldn't operate in there. I had to go down in the dining room, or go to the library up the street, and then stay there until it gets closer. But you shouldn't have to go through all that. But there are a lot of people that still live in that reality and still living through those conditions, and so they got to get outside. They got to get outside just to get some fresh air. And not stay up in a hot box. And so how do we respond to that? How do we address that? We're talking with Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint. Nicolette, I gotta let you go because we ran up on time. But fascinating conversation as always, and needed. Go to @Dr. N. Lewis-Saint, healthcareready.org for more on what they're doing, and also on tips and resources as well, as you're getting through this pandemic. Nicolette, thanks for your time as always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Oh, shoot. I just realized Calvin out of Delaware, but hold on 1 second. And Calvin, we'll pass your question on to Nicolette via social media, via Twitter. Let's take a break. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Do you need health insurance for your children? The Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can go to the doctor, receive health screenings and vaccines, and get what they need to live a healthy childhood. Families can be covered by CHIP no matter how much money they make. If you've experienced a recent change in employment or income, CHIP may be a good option for your family. Visit chipcoverspakids.com to apply or learn more.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
Support independent Black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875.
Or visit wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let me go to Derek first. Let me take Derek first out of Colorado because he had called in earlier. Derek, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Charles. I'll make several points, okay? The first one about the fireworks, it wasn't just in the explosions were very loud, but they showed it on TV, and they were all over the city. People were shooting fireworks, and they did show several brush fires, and somebody said that they're lucky they didn't wind up losing their home, too.
Yeah.
And also, there was another thing they did when they were having this, dealing with coronavirus, before they had the coronavirus, and afterwards, they had something in our city newspaper called 5280, and also the Denver Post, where they were encouraging other people to the best way to show your support if you want to help black people is to maybe go to a black restaurant. They listed some of the black restaurants for some of the people to go to. And I think they worked out well for some of the black business owners. And other one was about the coronavirus. When I went to the store, and I noticed when I went to the store, the vast majority of people had a mask, which I was really happy about because, it was very uncomfortable, because it's starting to going to be in the 90s here. And like I said, but people, like you said, they're not just protecting yourself, but you're protecting somebody else, too.
Mm-hmm.
And also as far as what was that? Your doctor talked about the emergencies that they have. We had one of our HOA meeting, and one thing I found out is that when they were going to start talking about what to do in a disaster preparedness, some people didn't even want to talk about it. They said people would have panic attacks, and I said, well, we have to talk about it. And they said they didn't even want to talk about it because, like you said, people wouldn't know how to deal with or handle it. So I can see how these things are going on with the coronavirus. How people are going into this kind of reminds me of when they had the AIDS virus when it first came out. People were in denial. People were saying, well, it's not affecting us. And then people didn't know what was going on, and then people were blaming other people. They were blaming the Haitians, and they were blaming the blacks, and they were blaming the gays. This one, they're blaming the Chinese, then they're blaming the blacks. And I think that's just the way, maybe the way people are this wired is that when they don't understand something, they have to do something that makes sense to them. It may be idiotic to everybody else.
Right.
But a lot of people, when they turn around there, all they know is that a bunch of people are dying. And even we had somebody in our church, they moved down to Texas, and their ex-husband, they were in the hospital. The sister wound up getting coronavirus, and her daughter, her other sister wound up getting it. She was in the hospital. She was hospitalized. Wow. She was on her deathbed. Her husband is a Republican. Her ex-husband is, and he kept on saying it was a hoax. And people just throw up their arms and say, wait a minute, your ex-wife was in the hospital. She almost died. What is going on with you? So, like I said, this is a very, 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 very interesting time.
The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for the following New Jersey counties: Burlington and Camden, plus the following Pennsylvania counties: Bucks, Montgomery, and Philadelphia, effective until 1:45 p.m. The National Weather Service in Mount Holly, New Jersey has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for northwestern Camden County, in southern New Jersey, northwestern Burlington County, in southern New Jersey, southeastern Montgomery County, in southeastern Pennsylvania, southeastern Bucks County, in southeastern Pennsylvania, northeastern Philadelphia County, in southeastern Pennsylvania, until 1:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. At 12:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, a severe thunderstorm was located over Holmesburg or near Philadelphia, moving east at 15 miles per hour. Hazard: 60 miles per hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. Source: radar indicated. Impact: minor damage to vehicles is possible. Wind damage to roofs, siding, trees, and power lines is possible. Locations impacted include Philadelphia, Camden, Bensalem, Willingboro, Lumberton, Florence, Burlington, Bristol, Mount Holly, Riverside, Palmyra, Jenkintown, Beverly, Rockledge, Tullytown, Langhorne, Bernathen, Wissinoming, Feasterville, Trevose, and Florence Roebling. This includes the following highways: New Jersey Turnpike between exits 5 and 6A, Pennsylvania Turnpike between mile markers 349359, Interstate 95 in Pennsylvania between mile markers 22 and 4T, Interstate 295W Jersey between mile markers 37 and 52.
Calvin. And then, okay, let me see what she says. If she gets right back on text. 215-634-8065-866. 361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, once again, we had put this breaking news out at the top of the program. Supreme Court unanimously ruling in a major case that states can penalize presidential electors who are faithless electors. So you cannot be a faithless elector. You have to vote with the popular vote in your state, or states can penalize faithless electors. That's essentially what the ruling was, or coming out of the Supreme Court. We talked about that. We have put that out. That's a big deal. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. See if I can try to get someone. I don't know how we have things tomorrow, but if there is an opportunity, maybe we'll try to bring someone on, just for a few minutes to explain why that ruling is a major deal, particularly with the operation of the Electoral College. In the meantime, the Electoral College is not going anywhere. There's no way to abolish it before the 2020 election comes up. So I don't want people feeling as if they need to tap out of the election or not vote because the Electoral College is in existence. No, you still need to vote. You still need to participate in this election. And I was thinking, we were supposed to bring on earlier on, I was going to ask about this, the Democratic National Committee's Black Caucus chair. So for some reason, they didn't make it on. So hopefully we can get them back. Which, I'm a little bit annoyed by, because the DNC, they have to be on their A game now, particularly when it's like getting their people out there to, the good thing is, we're hearing, and it's good, they're starting early. Like Biden campaign, put those commercials out early as you can. It shouldn't be just like a few weeks or a month before the election. This is not that kind of election where you get lax, and you got to be on your A game, and you've got to be very attentive too. You got to pay very attentive. You got to be very detailed and meticulous with your local Black media outreach. You just have to be. So, folks out there, like Democratic Party operatives and Democrats in general, you want to win this election, and especially in battleground states like Pennsylvania, and you're trying to do outreach, trying to conduct outreach in very crucial corners like Philadelphia, like southeastern PA, you got to be on top of it. You got to make sure your people too, whether strategists, pollsters, candidates, campaign managers, or your surrogates, people you're putting out there to relying on to have those conversations directly with the Black community. Because some of the numbers that I'm saying, some of the Black poll, as I was looking at the latest YouGov poll, and some of the Black polling numbers, I'm still concerned about. Black voters are still a very high number of Black voters compared to other demographic groups, white and Latino, but they're the most likely, Black voters still the most likely to say that they're not going to vote. So not like the majority of Black voters still saying that they will vote, but there's a higher number of Black voters compared to white voters and Latino voters who are saying that they're not voting in this election. That's concerning, because the stakes are the highest for us. So and this election, or participation in this election, and the outcome of this election will be able to start resolving a lot of challenges and issues that are related to us. And so when you have a high number, I mean, the stakes are not, I mean, yeah, the stakes are high for everyone, but the stakes are particularly high. They are the highest. They are the most dangerous for us, for black folks. But yeah, it makes no sense. But then you have like a higher number of black folks than any other demographic group saying, I'm not going to vote. Like, I don't get that. Like, when, the election is the first step, this election is the first step towards rectifying and solving some of these problems and some of these challenges. This is the last thing you should be considering. But I can tell you one thing. I mean, you look at the numbers of white voters, and I think it's only like 1% of white voters, at least I saw in that latest YouGov poll, who are saying, I have that in front of me, but I believe it was 1% of white voters saying that they're not voting. Just 1%. Just when white people are like, white voters are like, no, we're participating, whether they're voting for Trump or not, or they're looking to do something else. I think that that's a problem. And so, like, Democrats still have a problem as far as like really truly persuading, and that may be a lot of those numbers are showing up, particularly from younger black voters. We are getting ready to wrap this session of Reality Check, our Monday midday edition of Reality Check. And so we're getting ready to go to the source with the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. Continue to go to twitter.com. I'm at Ellison Report, #Reality Check. And feel free to email us, cellison@wordradio.com as well. Dr. Aaron Smith, the rapping professor, is coming up next at the source here on WURD. So continue to keep us dialed and continue to keep us tuned in here. I want to thank Troy Wilmore, too, on the Board of Steel for getting it done and keeping the radio trains running on time, making sure I stay on break on time as well. So appreciate that. Appreciate all the listeners and the guests as well. We'll be talking to you tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp, here on WURD, here on the home of Black Talk Media. So 10 a.m. sharp is the Reality Check Tuesday midday edition. So looking forward to talking with you there as well. Nicolette Lewis Saint, by the way, Calvin did get back to me. Here's her answer. There are a few cases of reinfection. It's not yet entirely clear if having an infection gives you immunity. So yes, it seems to be possible. So that's Calvin out of Delaware. His question: if you have coronavirus, or COVID-19, can you get it again? And the answer from Nicolette Lewis Saint, Dr. Nicolette Lewis Saint, is, I'm glad I checked in with her. There are a few cases of reinfection. It's not yet entirely clear if having an infection gives you immunity. So yes, it seems to be possible. So Calvin, I hope that's helpful in terms of passing that along to your folks. And just everyone, be careful out there, be safe out there. So coronavirus, the pandemic is still very real, and high violence too in places like Philly and elsewhere. Is still very real, and so let's see what we can do collectively to alleviate that pain and that suffering that we're all going through at this point. So it truly is a collaborative effort, but we'll talk more about it during our Tuesday midday edition here on Reality Check. All right, that wraps this edition as well, this Monday edition, and let's go into the source with rapping professor Dr. Aaron Smith. That's coming up next. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Please, Philly, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart. But more importantly, please, yes, stay safe out there. Have a great afternoon, a great evening. Try to have a dry one, too. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.